Pacific on here in just a few moments.
Oh, okay, Mike. This is WP5KU. No, I just want to key up about Pacificon. I'll be monitoring.
We're going to get to that first, so just wanted to get some of the preliminaries out of the way. Any stations with announcements? I didn't see any key-ups other than Dawn. I'm sure there are some, but yeah, actually I don't have any announcements to talk about in my inbox, so maybe there are none, but I just like to check. Stations with announcements, here's your chance. Key up, please.
K6KD.
K6KD, welcome. Go ahead.
Okay, good evening, Mike and the net. I know you normally mention the other nets later on, but I didn't know if you wanted to mention a couple of new ones that are joining the constellation. Maybe doing that early. If you were going to do it, I can back off. I just thought it might be worth mentioning as part of the announcements. Back to you.
Yeah, I think this is a good time to announce the new nets. We usually give the nets that are heard on the constellation of X reflectors later on, that is towards the end, but go ahead and do it now, especially since they're new. I'll let you handle that task, K6KD. Go ahead.
Okay, well, just as a thought, maybe in the future it might be worth, I know we try to get through a lot of the preliminaries quickly, but it might be worth with the announcements even in general doing it early. Anyway, the new ones, there's a new Power Sports net. Topics will include any and all interests regarding motorcycles, cars, boats, snowmobiles, ATVs. That will be Tuesday at 1900 hours Central Time, and I won't give the UTC. These nets are all on xrefl.net, X-Ray Romeo Echo Foxtrot Lima.net. Anyway, that is with Tim, KE0LMX. Again, new Power Sports net. Again, Tuesday at 1900 hours Central Time, and that is starting this coming Tuesday. Another net which will be starting at November 29th is the Truckers, Travelers, and RVers net, and that will be Wednesdays at 1900 hours Central Time. And that's being scheduled a few weeks from now to give people a chance to program their radios. It's moving from a D+ reflector, which is, I think, a good move. Give people a chance to program their hotspots and radios. So again, that will be the Truckers, Travelers, and RV net Wednesdays at 1900 hours Central Time, starting November 29th. And those are the new ones. Back to you, Mike. K6KD.
Well, very cool, and I appreciate you announcing that now. So 2 new nets to the Kings of Digital system, and looking forward to them. So those nets should be listed on the Roundtable forum board someplace at some point. I don't know if they're there yet, but we will certainly get them up there. We should have a listing of the nets that can be heard here, and as I scroll through it, that may not be the case, but then again, sometimes these things hide themselves from me, so you can always go there. If not, we'll repeat them again at the end of the roundtable, but basically, new nets. Very cool. Thank you, John. Other announcements? Stations, please, Kia. Okay, nothing more there. I can't imagine that there are too many more announcements, but if you think of an announcement and it comes to mind during the course of the net, just key up and say, hey, I get an announcement I forgot to make, or I'm just joining in and I have one, and not a problem. So we'll be sure to include you. So One other thing before we get into the topics, which we'll start with, first topic that is, will be a report on PacifiCon. We had two stations that participate fairly regularly in the roundtable there. I'm sure many of you went, but we're going to get their report in just a minute. I first, though, want to get rid of one item, not get rid of it. I mean, it's an important one, otherwise I wouldn't make it. And to see if there are any follow-ups to any of last week's topics. We bring this up now because many stations listen to this on a recorded basis, either through the podcast or Broadcastify. Maybe they record it themselves on their radios for those capable of recording things, digital things on their SD or micro SD cards. And they will hear a topic or a discussion and say, hey, I know a lot about that and I want to talk about it and I've got something to follow up on. Or somebody that may have presented something last week gave it a second thought or looked up or came up with some additional information and they wanted to add to the discussion. So we're going to call for any stations with anything more or new to add to what we talked about last week. If that's you, time to key up. Please do so now. Well, didn't see or hear anything. I guess I could have said it didn't see or hear anything, or hear or see anything. Either way, there's nothing there. So, maybe we should find another way to get follow-up to discussions from the prior week. But sometimes that, I get chewed out for not going back and going over old territory. So, let's just, without further ado, get on with it. And first up tonight, we want to talk about the report from PacifiCon, which is a fairly major hamvention. It's sponsored by ARRL and the local amateur radio club that's in the northern central California area. And we've already had Don WB5EKU key up as well as K6JM. So I'm going to first call on the station that keyed up first, which was WB5EKU. So Don, did you want to start out, or are you going to just give an overview and hand it off to Jim and Hyde, or how would you like to proceed? WB5EKU, go ahead.
Yeah, Mike, I'd like to let Jim go first. And then I'll fill in what I need. He wasn't there as long, but he talked to a lot of the people we did. So, yeah, let Jim go first, and I'll fill in, and then anyone else who was up there might want to add. WB5EKU.
Sure, we'll take all that wish to discuss it. So, K6JM, Jim, are you ready to go? If so, go ahead.
Okay, this is K6JM, and we did have PacifiCon over the weekend, and it was a lot of fun, and had a lot of people there. Once again, it was attended by a lot of people, and I'm going to turn it back to you to run the net here, but just to give a link for people who are interested, the slides from the roundtable that are available to the roundtable participants can be found at let me see if I may I make sure I do this right. If you go to www.k6jm.com/DV, you'll find the slides. So I'll let you handle that, Mike. Back to you, Mike. This is K6JM.
Alrighty, well, if I handle it, I presume you mean that I should put the URL in the shout box, and I will do that. So at this point, can you give us just a brief overview, if you like, of your multimode presentation, what to expect from the slides? Of course, they being those that listen and have an interest in your presentation, take a look at the slides at the web address that I'll put up on the shout box. In the meantime, tell us what you learned and your thoughts about Pacificon and what's new. What secrets did you pry out of people about what to expect in the digital modes arena? K6JM, go ahead.
Okay. Pacificon has been around for a while, and it was another fun weekend. It had quite a few presentations. The one that I was involved in, and so was Don, W6KV, and so was KI6JUM, took place Friday morning, but Pacificon started on Friday. And Saturday morning at, I think it was about 9:30.
All right, it appears we lost K6JM. The signal dropped altogether. Let's stand by until he realizes that has been the case and comes back to us. Stations, please stand by. And while we're waiting for Jim, I realized that the link that he gave that I copied is not a good link, so don't start chewing me out for listing a bad link. I know it's bad, but there's something missing, and I'll get that from Jim when he keys back up. Well, Don, in Jim's absence, while he, it could be a bad loss of a battery, who knows what. Would you like to start off and just take some pauses here and there to let Jim pick it up where he left off, WB5EKU? Go ahead.
That's a good agent in that WB5EKU. Yeah, sure. He inadvertently said W6KD gave the presentation, but actually it was WB5EKU. The presentation he's talking about was a multi-mode digital voice presentation that happened Saturday morning, about 9:20 or so. We did the presentation. Jim K6JM, Jim KI6ZUM, and myself, WB5EKU. We gave the presentation to a packed room. We were surprised how full it was. It was standing room only. All the chairs were filled. They were sitting in the back. They were sitting alongside each wall. I would estimate it was in one of the smaller rooms. I would estimate 120 to 130 people, but obviously I didn't count feet and divide by two. But it went very well. Jim KI6JM started it off, and then he introduced. It did about 5 or 10 minutes, and then he introduced KI6ZUM. Jim, who produces the MMDVM modem boards. Let me reset here. Who had a slide presentation, which Jim will be putting up on his site. and he gave quite an explanation of his boards and the new boards that are coming out, and some of the things that they possibly have in the works. He spoke for approximately, I'd say, 30 to 35 minutes. Jim came in and filled in a little more, and then I was kind of at the tail end with a discussion of a brief explanation of K6 PUW multi-mode repeater, first one in California, at high level that is, and serving well for coming up on a year now. Let me reset. Okay, and then I finished up with a brief discussion of 4K transcoding. We ran out of time, so we took questions out in the hallway afterwards because there was another presentation right behind us. So I was surprised. There were quite a few people with questions, and it was it's nice to see that there's a lot of interest. One thing of interest was Jim took a hand poll. He wanted to know how many people had one digital radio, which was most of the people, then how many had two, and there were, fewer. How many had 3 digital voice radios, and it thinned it out. And then he asked how many had 4, and there were only 2. Myself and K6BV. Unless I missed somebody else, but the fourth being P25. Reset. I find more P25 activity down here in Southern California than apparently up there, although there could have been some people that were not attending the conference. So, whatever. I thought it was an interesting poll, and it goes along with what we're seeing. There are two main branches, PSOI DMR, and then Fusion is third, and P25 right now is running fourth. Jim was putting slides up on his site, but I was lucky enough to bring a relatively decent camera, and I videoed the presentation. I'm working on editing the video now, and I'm also integrating the slides, so you don't have to watch a video with just a talking head for 65 minutes or whatever it was. As soon as we get that done and put up on a link, we will let everyone know and post it on the shout box and publicize it as much as possible. It's hopefully it'll be pretty decent. Once again, reset. Okay, that was the presentation that we did. I drove up Thursday night to San Ramon so I could attend the antenna seminar, which is a real good antenna seminar that they have every year. That takes up all day Friday. And Friday night was a digital dinner. We had it at Buffalo Wild Wings, and I found myself in the midst of quite a TMR gathering, but it was very nice. Made a whole bunch of new friends, and had quite a few really nice discussions. Saturday morning was taken up by preparing for and actually doing the presentation, and then tearing down and moving things back up to my room, and then I got a chance to go through the exhibits. Which were I found the exhibits were a little smaller. It's been a couple of years since I've been up to Pacificon, and I found them to be a little bit smaller, but more commercially intense. Meaning they had a lot of very interesting commercial booths there, and got to talk to a lot of the radio manufacturers. By the way, Kenwood was not there. I don't think Kenwood goes to shows anymore. I don't even think they go to Dayton, although I could be wrong. But Yaesu and ICOM, which were interesting, back to back, right against each other. Ray Novak was there representing ICOM, and Jim and I had a couple of very nice conversations with him. Got to talk to a lot of the other people. They were right across the aisle from Ham Radio Outlet, which is a huge booth. There were two rooms that they had the exhibits in, and I looked at it and looked at new radios, and I looked at them, and I did not buy a new radio. I want to see what's going to be coming out, but a lot of good stuff. One more reset, and then Mike, after this reset, let me see if Jim's back, and maybe he wants to say some more. Let me turn it back to you for a second, Mike. N6HKH, WB5EKU.
Alrighty, let's see if Jim is back. K6JM, go ahead.
Okay, I'm coming through W6CX DSR repeater in Northern California. Can you copy me, Mike?
Yeah, and unfortunately you dropped off not too soon after you took it back after we got the slideshow presentation, and W6KD has it correctly listed. I didn't, and I don't know why, but that's beside the point. But you left off of starting out about, you were saying it was about 9:30 in the morning. Do you want to pick it up from there?
Okay, Don did a good recap on that kind of the process up here. But the main point was KS6Z Lem's presentation was about the MMDVM modem and related products, including the Zoom Spot. And, of course, those are all using software by G4KLX, open source software. So Jim's presentation started out talking about open source and kind of plugging it, and he didn't have any naysayers, particularly Don and I are of course supportive of open source also, as I think a lot of people on this net tonight. And he talked a little bit about the history of MMDVM and G4KLX's contributions, and really he didn't talk a lot about his own, but of course he's one of the people who took the idea and turned it into a board, and he's quite an electrical engineer, as you know, and wrote some of the firmware also. Let me take a break. So that was fun. And the Zoom Spot, of course, is the phrase I used in the presentation is the Zoom Spot is cuter than a bug's ear. And I have not really ever used a microscope to look at a bug's ear, but it is a really cute product. It can sit on the Raspberry Pi Zero wireless product, and it's amazing how much functionality is in such a small little product, or pair of products. And I talked a little bit about how we're getting increasing interoperability. Let me take one more break here. But really my theme was that in the early days we had kind of factions that were, we had started with D plus and REF and then XRF, DCS. And what we're seeing now is kind of a bringing together of the different factions. So, for example, I'm talking through a repeater that allows full D-Star reflectors, which would include REF, DCS, and XRF. And every night on Thursday night, it automatically switches over to XRF 002 Alpha. Well, the next step in this interoperability, of course, is multi-mode repeaters like K6PUW, which Don talked about. And I think my overall theme is that we had a lot of factionalization, if you will, or fractures in our digital voice world. We're beginning to see really a merging together of interoperability. And I think transcoding is kind of like leading the way there. And the whole point is we're all part of the digital voice world, and we're beginning increasingly to be able to talk to each other. And we don't have to fight each other, we can just talk to each other. Back to you, Mike. This is K6JM.
Jim, appreciate it. Let me give you a break and go back to Don. So, Don, what did you see that was new in the vendors area? WB5EK, go ahead.
WB5EKU. You know, I saw a couple of new radios, DMR type radios. There was nothing that I saw that was really super outstanding. Nothing groundbreaking. I think we've done quite a bit of groundbreaking so far, you know, with MMDVM, multimode, and transcoder. But I was a little surprised. I saw some beautiful HF radios. I mean, some of these radios are just, you know, with their screens, they just blow you away looking at these things. Man, I wish I had $6,000 to buy a radio, but I don't. I probably have to pay a lot more in alimony if I did. Hi. You know, I saw some more Chinese manufactured radios. That's what I said in my previous transmission. I thought I was going to buy something, but I looked at them and I just didn't. I'm going to have to wait and see. They're coming out with a lot of functionality. The radios, I do have to say, they feel like they're made very well. Not like the Motorola XTS series. Motorola XTS series is a radio that you can also use as a weapon, but that's another that's another story. You know, a lot of the show, the HRO was selling quite a bit. I think they did sell out of open spots, but when I passed by Friday, right when they first opened up, they only had 2 hours of the exhibits on Friday. They had 5 open spots, and I think by midday Saturday, they sold out. Let me reset here. You know, I thought they would have had more of something like that, and I heard a couple of people asking about it. It was great to talk to a lot of the manufacturers. The ARRL had a big booth there. AMSAT had a booth. I know I missed a couple. I mean, there was a large number of booths, especially for organizations. NARC was there. The Northern California Frequency Spectrum Management Association, like Scrubby is down here. They had a booth, and you know, quite a few interesting displays. But like I said, Mike, I really saw nothing groundbreaking. You could spend all day in the Flex Radio booth. They had a very large booth, and you know, beautiful equipment, but nothing digital voice. So, S6HKH WB5EKU.
Well, it sounds like an amazing time that you guys had. So, I take it no new multi-mode devices, specifically hotspot or access devices. I think I heard you say that. And also, the new DMR radios that you said were mostly Chinese, was there a particular brand or manufacturer that seemed to be leading the way and offering new features? You mentioned that they were displaying radios, but is it the same old radio? Is it just better built, or are they making features and that would be interested in the amateur group, or more specifically, is there a manufacturer that's making a DMR radio, which we realize is a commercial product, but perhaps saying, here's what the amateurs should be using? Anything like that? Back to you, Doc. Go ahead.
Well, PowerWorks was there, and they're selling their, what is it, the TYT radio, I think it is. Maybe I'm wrong. Correct. It could be wrong. After a while, they start blending together. Connect Systems was showing the Anytone radio, which they had a show special for. I think it was $169. I could be wrong. They gave you an extra large capacity battery with it. Nice looking radio. I think they're getting away from the 16 channels per zone. I think they're now getting into larger capacity zones. Let's see, who else had it? Yeah, there were a couple other radios. Like I say, they're well built, and they range from $250 on down, and which is nice with DMR radios. Build quality, they look good, but a new car looks good when you first get it out of the showroom too. So it'd be interesting to see how some of these hold up. Although for a radio that cheap, I mean, if it gives you too much trouble, you throw it away and buy a new one. I don't think I'd do that with the Kenwood D74, spending that much money for it. But I have a few reset.
WE5.
I have a Yaesu FT2D radio, and there's a new firmware upgrade for it. So I thought, I'll bring it to the booth and have them do it for me. Well, they wouldn't do it there, and one of the first things they said was be careful with the information on the website, because they just did, whoever put it up just did a cut and paste, and there's some information in there that you really have to look very hard at before you do your upgrade. And read it over, and I think they tell you to do a radio reset after each step. There's like 3 steps, but they say that's incorrect. You have to wait till you do everything to do a radio reset. So I thought that was interesting that Yaesu didn't offer that service, there. But that's my own feeling. What else? Let me turn it back to you, Jim. Sure. Mike, if maybe Jim wants to add some more to it. If not, and I think of anything else, I'll let you know. That's 6HKH, WB5EKU.
Yeah, those manufacturers, they're not going to update your radios, because if they blow them up, then they have to send them off to their own tech support. And I'm not even certain that that's a good thing. And then, of course, if you do it and you blow it up yourself while upgrading the firmware, then it's all on you, not on them. I can see that. But it's kind of a odd thing to have them warn people about problems on their own website that involve firmware upgrades, and to read it very carefully. You think that if there was a problem, they'd fix it, but then that's just me. So, K6JM, I guess Don wants you to pick it up, and maybe you can talk about what was going on over at ICOM, if anything. I didn't hear any mention of new D-Star radios, so I presume there are none, but still, any news on what's coming down the pike, and particularly any new access, hotspot devices or access points that vendors were displaying, whether they're in production or just vaporware. K6JM, go ahead.
I'm coming in through my hotspot, so I hope it hangs in there like last time it didn't. I guess, my thought is that we are a small niche, those of us interested in open source, the new XRF reflectors, now multi-mode transcoding. And so the whole idea of Pacificon was where Don and Jim and I were able to talk about multi-mode, and I think a lot of people were hearing about it for the first time. So if you don't hear anything new, we're still out there giving publicity to this new emerging area within digital voice. And as far as I mean, I would say that talking to Ray, he mentioned that he's writing a blog.
Well, they didn't last long for K6JM, much like the before, so let's just stand by and see if you can rejoin us.
KG.
K6JM.
K6J.
Yeah, Jim, you dropped when when you were talking about Ray Novak said he was writing a blog, and and also let me acknowledge KG5SLG, that keyed up, but K6JM, go ahead.
Roger. Good evening to the net. First time on DMR. I'm on a DMR mobile spot, cross moding, and I'm the AM mode to XLX313. I accidentally stumbled upon your net. Very interesting net so far. I'm actually thinking about investing in a V-Star radio myself this next year. I was listening to your conversation there in regards to the hotspots. I'm currently a repeat owner in Rio Rancho, New Mexico. Formerly from Victorville, 13 years there, and native California, relocated in 2015 here. Lunar Hotspot. I am actually going to be my repeaters been coordinated and it's up and functioning on DMR, and I'm going to activate the multi-mode capability to allow D-Star as well as Fusion. I'm not sure yet about NX or P25, but I'm very excited about the prospects of D-Star. I really like some of the functionality that it has in it. And I've also ordered, you guys were talking about hotspots there, I also ordered a Zoom spot, which is a smaller Raspberry Pi with a MMDB board on top of it. And we'll have Bluetooth, Wi-Fi capabilities, and we'll do multi-mode as well. Anyway, I just want to jump there and say good evening to the net. It's my first time on here, and I look forward to being on here and listening to your conversation. Very intelligent net, a lot of good information. This is Kilo Golf 5, Sierra Lima Golf, Rio Rancho, New Mexico. Kevin here is on.
KG5SLG, appreciate you joining us, and nice to meet you. I'm pushing the log, and hopefully you enjoy the net. In the interim, let's get back to K6JM, and Jim, pick it up with Ray and his blog. Go ahead.
Okay, let's verify. Can you talk to me?
I didn't understand that. That was pretty garbled. Well, it actually sounds like you're too close to the mic. Say again.
Okay, I don't understand why my hotspot is acting up. Do you copy?
I do.
All right, just to finish up, to help go troubleshoot why I'm having some problems tonight. But yeah, Ray is writing a blog that he should be releasing this week or next week that is just some interesting comments about certain features of certain radios of other digital voice modes other than D-Star. And it'll be fun to read what he has to say. He was just kind of getting a heads up to Don and me, but let's wait until he actually gets it into digital print before we think about it. But it has to do with features that are perfect for commercial and mobile radios. Like you can kill a radio remotely if you're the administrator. but you certainly wouldn't want that in amateur radio. But it's ideal for land mobile. But I'd say that what would be interesting to follow. But overall, I think my point was that we're starting to talk about transcoding and multimode, and it's good for people to hear about it. Not everybody knows about it. So I'm going to kick it back to you. People who do listen to this roundtable probably do know a lot more. Back to you, Mike. This is K6JM.
Oh, no doubt. And as to Ray's blog, yeah, we'll wait and see what's going on. I take it, and I have nothing in my inbox about any new equipment from that is digital voice or D-Star equipment from ICOM, which is not surprising, but it'll be interesting to see, Ray's thoughts on writing. So, very good. Appreciate it. And I'm glad it was a packed house. I haven't heard of anybody walking away disappointed from your presentation. Of course, why would they? So let's go back to Don, WB5EKU, and, anything further, Don, before we open for stations that also attended and would wish to comment on what they learned? WB5EKU, go ahead.
Yeah, SFHG, WB5EKU. All right, just for KG5SLG, I'm talking through my Zoom spot right now, DMR, going through the transfer. So it does work. Matter of fact, this Zoom spot we used as a demo at the presentation and at the digital dinner the night before. It's a cute little package because the Zoom spot is a set is a size 0, and it fits right on top. And it's just very small. Probably too small. I was concerned about having it on a table and maybe having it grow legs and walk away. But it didn't. We made quite a few things to show. Right away, and I guess it'll come on his blog. He didn't go into detail, but he did mention, there are things in the works. Hopefully it'll be good things. But it was great seeing him again. I mean, he's a real nice man. I do want to say and thank Jim K6JM for inviting me to intrude on his demo to say a little bit about the transcoder and at least get it out there in front of a lot of people. K6CUN did a very good presentation about these products. And it's very nice that the Pacificon let us have the time and the effort. But Jim did a great job putting it together, and kudos to Jim. And also G4KLX, because none of us would be doing all this without G4KLX and what he produced and his team and everything. I mean, without them, we'd be using Dixie cups and strings, I think. Hi. That's about, what I have right now, Mike. If I think of anything else, I will let you know. Transcode is working real good, knock on wood. Thought I'd just make the transmission to it, so, we can see, it is working great. So, Mike, I'll turn it back to you, see what else comes up, and, if I think of anything else, I'll key up. And 6HKH, 55 EKU from the K6W repeater.
All right, Don, appreciate it. So, stations that attended, or who attended actually, Pacificon, and wish to report on what they observed or learned. I mean, you can tell that the forum presenters were really busy and didn't get a chance to look at each and every booth, and certainly learning about anything new that's coming up in the digital world, the digital voice world, would be of interest. You don't have to make a long presentation. We just would like to know your observation. So stations from Pacificon, please key up. Well, So nobody else attended PacificCon. I really find that hard to believe, but maybe that's the case. Maybe people are still pooped out from attending and just can't even make it to the radio tonight. But I would think, in fact, looking at the dashboards, there seems to be a fair number of stations that I'm pretty sure found a way to get there. And just a brief, your observations, even if it's not specifically about digital voice, but nevertheless, well, we don't want to get into other modes just on a technical basis, but if there's something that we should keep our eyes on, or if you thought there was a particular forum or presentation that you found to be interesting, we'd sure like to hear about it. I'm not going to take up the rest of the net with PacificCon, but I want to allow some time now for those stations that, took it in and would like to breathe it out with us here on the roundtable. We are interested. Stations, please key up. Alrighty, well, apparently begging and pleading didn't work, but I appreciate at least Bob and Jim, Don and Jim, thinking about it and giving us an update. So, there is one thing, though, and I hope K6GM is with us. So, of the people that were there in the presentation as you got into, well, actually, it's for Don when I think about it, because you talked about the 4K transcoding. Did you get, were people like swooning in their chairs, or were there questions? Did they, was this a crowd that this was new to them? What was your impression, and what was the reception to discussing transcoding and that being the future of digital voice and full integration of the open source digital modes? WB5EKU, go ahead.
WB5EKU. I don't know to say it's swooning, but there was a lot of interest. There was some people that did not get it, and I can see that on their faces. Either that or my presentation was so poor. But at least nobody threw cabbages and tomatoes at me or rotten eggs, whatever. But I think for the most part, it was more of a, hey, this is out there, and people really learned about it. I gave them websites. I gave them the dashboard pages and all that information. Quite a few people were taking pictures of the screen, writing down a lot of the information. So from an information standpoint, I think it was good. I didn't have groupies running after me, but we had people out in the hallway that were asking questions about what does it take. Part of the presentation had explained that it was done through a DVSI 3012 box, and there was some interest in that, and there was also some interest in the cost and probably what it takes to actually set up a server and a transcoder. So I think we'll see more as as people digest some of the information. That's XHPH WB5EKU.
All right, Don, I appreciate it, and thanks to both you and Jim for taking the time to talk to us about PacificCon, especially given the fact that you guys were presenters. And of course, any presenter at any Hamvention, Hamfest, however you want to call it, that would like to talk about the presentation, give us a URL for where further information can be found, or if you gave a presentation, for that matter, it could have been very similar to one that that both K6GM and WB5EKU presented at a different location, different Hamfest, and would like to jump in and comment on it, please feel free to key up and let us know. In the meantime, I want to take a look at the shout box. There weren't a lot of posts this past week, but we did get a couple, and I wanted to call on K6KD, if you wouldn't mind just explaining for a few moments this poll that you have on the Roundtable forum board at roundtable.tech. Roundtable's all one word, .tech. And the purpose of it, and also maybe just a brief explanation as to, well, why would you ask, I guess, would be one simple way of framing, the issue. So, K6KD, go ahead.
Okay, Mike. Well, we have, for a long time advertised the features of the DXRFD4 reflectors that are running XRF002, XRF310, and XRF555. And we often mention that, with those capability, there are a lot of places to go, and, people are welcome to link up to any of the modules. But it's also, apparent that there are some methods of communication. I think, for example, WinDV, if you're communicating via XRF, I believe, I'm not positive because I don't use WinDV often, but I believe that there are some limitations because the traditional X reflectors only use modules A through D for communication and E for echo. So I thought it would be useful because we've been kicking around, and there's occasionally questions come up about providing additional content, additional places to go. And I wanted to find out, or I thought it would be good to get an idea, just how usable those extra modules would be for the, greater percentage of people. So, that was the reason for it. The poll is in current discussions. The forum software requires you to log in. It's not something that we're mandating, but the forum software requires it just as it requires you to post a message or reply to log in. And it's under current discussions. And so if you log in, just a poll. Can you connect to the XRF reflectors using all 26 modules? Yes, no, but do you plan on being able to do it? And no, just so we have a better idea of going forward of particularly with the the various transcoding modules that we have as well that can be cross-linked. So anyway, that was the reason for it. If that clarifies it, back over to you, Mike. K6KD.
Okay, I got it. So while there's 26 modules, we can't be having a net and whipping it up on the modules that are above F, for example, or F and above, if a number of the repeaters, reflectors out there running the older version of DXRFD or XLXD would not be able to connect beyond A through E. Well, they wouldn't use E because that's the echo module. So I got it. All right, that makes sense. You're trying to see just how far, or how meaningful, I suppose, the use of the 26 modules beyond E would be to the landscape, and how would you know until you checked it out? Got it. Very good. I appreciate it. And so if you guys, let's help John out. I don't want him going to bed with, feeling that he's being ignored, but, if you go up to, well, where is it here? Was it? He said where it was, and I lost it. John, tell me again where it is, and it's not just sticking out, obviously. K6KD, go ahead.
Okay, well, it's listed in the shout box going up to current discussions. So if you go up to the current discussions folder, and then the thread is called the D-Star XRF Reflector Module Connection Question. Back to you, Mike.
Oh, okay. Well, it's actually not the shout box. It's the current discussions category. And on the current discussions folder, well, there's only one there. So if you guys can take a few moments to jump in there and answer the poll, or if you want, you could post some information relative to the question being posed. All of us would greatly appreciate it, but don't expect any flowers or Christmas cards or greetings from anyone other than K6KD for participating. I'm just kidding. And for those that are leery to register or sign up within the Roundtable Forum board, please don't worry about it. When you register or log in for the first time, please use your call sign, and nothing bad happens. We don't use it, sell it, neither does Pro Boards, but it just has to verify that you're not a computer, and it avoids the problem of bots and spam and all kinds of other issues. It's really Pro Boards protecting all of its users. It's not something that we dreamed up. Frankly, it'd be fine with me if you didn't have to log in, but you do. All right, perfect. So also in the shout box, we've got a fairly cryptic one-liner entry where KE0AYJ, who's been running from, it seems, one hurricane disaster, one FEMA response to another. And you might remember he posted that he was in Puerto Rico doing some work on behalf of the government or FEMA or a contractor. And that on the 24th, a couple of days ago, he posted that he, quote, got back last Friday night, end quote. So I'm hoping that maybe Andy might be around to give us a report on what he did in Puerto Rico and what he saw, and if he got out of there because he needed to, or got out of there because he had to. KE0AYJ, I'm kidding, of course. KE0AYJ, if you're with us, please go ahead.
And 6HKH in the net. Good evening, KE0AYJ, back in Indiana. Yeah, it was something else. I deployed with the Red Cross. We were the what they call the Force of 50. Actually, there were more than 50 that applied. There were about 430, I think, applied for the deployment with the Red Cross to provide communications. And so we went there, and I got stuck at a dam that was about to break away. And downstream was about a little bit over 350,000 people. So I was the first person in there stateside with communication, or from the States with communications. And basically had to switch into all sorts of modes, send satellite navigation back to our coordinates back to the EOC, which is the convention center in San Juan. I was way up in the northwest corner of the state, just a little bit south of a town called Isabella. And bringing helicopters in, then switching to medical mode and treating a bunch of people for dysentery. So let's take a break on that one. And the adventure is concluded with me getting bit by snakes, boas. They got Puerto Rican boas. They're black in color, and they don't like to be stepped on. I found that out. And spiders that have eyes that glow in the dark. Really weird things. And bats galore. And rain every night. Rain, rain, rain. I've never seen so much rain. And all they had at Burger King was chicken and rice.
Well, are you having nightmares? Go ahead.
No, Mike, no nightmares, but I'm waiting for Monday to roll around to see if I go back on another deployment with the dogs for search and rescue. They still have a lot of people missing, and this time I'll be up in the northeast corner of the island when I get called up for that. They're having trouble with a lot of the water systems are breaking down, and they're having trouble getting water out. FEMA is really, really slow on things. Everything's got to be documented. It's a government agency. Everything's got to be documented on where it goes and just how much it is and why it's got to be delivered and who's requesting it and on and on and on. And there's a mild form of corruption over there. There always has been, and I don't think it's going to be cured anytime soon. So, but that's the way it goes, and they were totally amazed. All the groups were there. The FCC was there. The ITU was there. FEMA, of course, was there. ECF2, which is all the communications branch of FEMA. they were there, and within 48 hours, we had statewide communications and linked everything together. The hams in Puerto Rico really did a good thing on that. They linked all the repeaters together. Statewide coverage, we were so far ahead of FEMA and everybody else. Spectrum came to us and wanted to know where interference was so they could get some clear channels to use and clear frequencies. It was a nightmare, and we're talking total devastation. The island is totally devastated.
Well, I read a lot of complimentary articles, and some of them were quite adventurous in the way they described amateur radio's response and the Red Cross call-up for hams to spend time there and provide communications because of the infrastructure being completely wiped out. At least to the news, we see that there are big complaints with the lack of electricity and the lack of cell phone service. So when you were there, did you see was there any kind of brain dead right this second? Had they made any headway in establishing, getting power back and getting cell phone service back to you?
Well, when I first arrived on the island, there was less than 1% cell phone coverage. The island was totally black. Everything was running on generators that they had rented. Big hotels, of course, can afford the big generators. And it was basically a lack of maintenance on the infrastructure that was there, taking care of things, taking care of generators. You got to maintain those things. So FEMA flew in a couple of 50-megawatt generators and some 75-megawatt generators, and they got them located in various parts of the island. They're still trying to put that in because all the lines are down. The 480 lines are down, and the feeders, the 120K line is down. They're all down. I mean, that's what they're restringing like crazy, putting lines in. And by the time I left, the island had cell phone coverage sporadically throughout the outer ring of the island. Cell phone service started coming up. You could not get internet. You could text and you could call. And we overloaded the satellite systems. Everybody had sat phones, and it was overloaded. You couldn't get a transponder to fix on you without bumping you off. So it was, and it's pretty much still that way. It's just really chaotic right now. They got a lot of things that still need to be done, be completed, and that's basically why they're calling us back. Some of the infrastructure is back in. When we got there was very few gas stations, and less than 10% of the gas stations were operating. And by the time I left, there was 48% of the gas stations were operating. So it's coming back. The roads were cluttered with trash, and sewage systems were breaking down, and there's all sorts of breathalysis going on and dysentery. And that's just one of those things that medical teams were just coming in there like crazy, going everywhere. A lot of volunteers.
Well, you're sending shivers down my spine. One last question. Where did you sleep? KE0AYJ, go ahead.
Well, I was at a place called Guadalajara Dam. And that was a dam that had a 24-inch crack in it that was fixing to give way. They went in there, and finally they showed up after I got coordinates, and Navy and Marine come in with heavy lift helicopters, the Sea Kings, and Army Chinooks came in, and they were just lifting Jersey barriers in for the spillway to reinforce that so they could open the gates up and everything and get stuff really flowing and lower the lake level so they could repair the dam. I was in an abandoned house that overlooked the dam area, approximately, I'm saying it's about 150 feet or 200 feet above the site level of the dam. So I had a real good view. And a lot of those things, pictures we showed on the internet and somewhere on Ham Nation last night, and things like that. But I slept basically, need no heat, of course, but it rained every night. I woke up in thunderstorms, and a couple of nights I slept underneath the tarp, with a sandbag, and woke up soaking wet. But the radio kept on working, and I heard mention of Ray Novak and his crew. They sent us a bunch of 7200s that the ARL got and sent to us. And that's what we used, and they performed flawlessly. So kudos to that, and everything worked fine. You're talking P25 radios. Yeah, we had ICOMs and Motorola's, and there were some few others, and a few repeaters fell off the truck and mysteriously appeared on 2 meters. And they were write-offs basically from the Sprint Nextel rebanding program in Abilene. So tons and tons of radios came in that were gimmies to anybody out there that needed them.
Well, I know I appreciate you volunteering your time over there to help. It's something that I would not do and could not probably do, but, you're a brave soul, I think, and we appreciate the report. Let me just make sure that you were done. You did kind of unkey a little bit ahead of time, and I just wanted to make sure you weren't resetting for the timer. So anything final, Andy, before we move on? KE0AYJ, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, the final is I'll wait till Monday and see if I get recalled back for another deployment with my 2 dogs for search and rescue. And that's possibly a 60 to 90 day deployment, to see what all we can do to help clean it up and get everything going. Businesses are starting to come back online. It's a do or die scenario for many of them. They've got to pay rent on the buildings, and when infrastructure breaks down and telecommunications down, nobody gets checks deposited in the bank. Banking systems were non-existent. You showed up with cash in your pocket from the mainland, and you lived off the cash, and you bought what you could, and that was basically it. And then when you got back into San Juan, there was a few ATMs in the convention center that was the Emergency Operations Center, where President Trump was, and Mike Pence was, Vice President was there, and Paul Ryan came over, and Jesse Jackson was there, and it went on and on and on. But that's my last 6 days were spent there debriefing everybody and anybody, Corps of Engineers, Air Force, Marines, everything that happened. I had to give a big journal on everything I had and surrender that. So that's it. But that's the last thing I'm waiting on, is to see if I get to go back.
Was it worthwhile on a personal level? Go ahead.
Well, I think I've said this before, and I'll say it again. When you go on a search and rescue, you don't know what you're going to be faced with. As a ham radio operator, we look at just communicating, and we're multi-talented and multifaceted. We've got a lot of history behind us on different things that we've done throughout our lives, so that's what I use. I fell back on my medical training and navigation experience and stuff like that. We fall back on that. Was it a personal thing? Did I get something from it? When you go on a rescue like this or a mission like this, you go in there feeling that you want to help and do what you can to help. And part of that is when you get done with it, you reflect back on it, you really understand that part of the rescue is for yourself. You rescued yourself too. And it's a feel-good feeling. You come home. There were a lot of heroes over there. Most of them were the ones that had to live through the storm and survive it, and they did just fine, and they cleared the way for the rest of us to come in. And the people lived over there that went through it. There's a lot of them that are leaving, and have to leave because their houses were destroyed. The airport was absolute mayhem coming back, but I finally got a good cup of coffee, and once I hit Atlanta, and I actually found a donut shop. And I'm so sick of chicken and rice. I hope I never see another chicken or another kernel of rice. I'll never touch it. I'll never touch it again.
Wow. Well, good luck if you have to go back. I mean, that's a long stretch on chicken and rice, especially if you've sworn off it. All right, we appreciate the report. And let me just pause to see if there just happens to be another station that also deployed to Puerto Rico or to one of the other disaster sites that would like to give a brief report. We'll take you now. Please key up. All right, nothing seen or heard. I noticed that K6JM posted in the shop box about a rumor that had been kicking around, and actually it was a topic that I was working on, and that is that there was a new version or maybe an additional or replacement version of the Blue DV software that would allow it to operate as Jim describes in the Shoutbox, and that for WinDV users, and now he says they're migrating to Blue DV, and that's pretty cool and pretty interesting. So I wanted to see if maybe I could call on Jim. I know that he's probably tired of talking on the radio and wants to, rest up because I'm sure there's dog shows this weekend, but that's beside the point because, well, it's the roundtable. So Jim, what's the story on this? Is this is this some new software, a different version of Blue DV, or where did this come from? Because the last report I had was not quite so all-encompassing for that particular device. K6JM, go ahead.
Okay, let me just say briefly, I did meet the author of Blue DV at Dayton, David, I think it's PA7LIM, from the Netherlands, Holland. Yeah, nice guy, and it's really quite an interesting piece of software. It is written to run under Microsoft infrastructure, but you can install it in, like, for example, Android devices where you have basically a simulator to allow it to run. And I just downloaded the latest version, and just before I posted on the Shoutbox, my message was basically for XRF modules, it is able to link to all A through Z modules, all 26. But just before I posted it, I just opened up my Android phone and made sure that was a true statement, and it is. But I don't know that it's new. I think I don't know when he added that, but the version on my phone has that, and I don't remember updating all that recently. Anyway, what's interesting about it is that he did recently add support for the Northwest Digital ThumbDV, but I use it with my DV Mega and BlueStack. Back to you, K6JM.
Oh, I got it. So what's new is the support for the ThumbDV, which of course is very cool. Most everybody has one, I would think. If you don't, you're out of your mind. Not to have one, at least one that you can throw in your pocket and take it just about everywhere you like. So what's coming out from, and I forgot the guy's name from the Netherlands, the Blue DV guy. You mentioned it and it just went out. I think you said Dave. I thought it was somebody else, but anyway, what's new coming out of Blue DV land, and the guys over there that well, I just lost the name again. But anyway, back to you, Jim. Is there what are they working on that we don't know about? I guess is the best way to put it. K6JM, go ahead.
Well, I don't know. I had sent a note to David a couple of months ago, asking for a small improvement by my point of view. But he's really focused, you remember Steve Jobs is famous for trying to make sure all the people at Apple understood that simplicity was job number one, keeping it straightforward and easy to use. And I think David kind of has that philosophy. So what I was asking him to add would have been making it a little bit more complex, and I'm not sure he's going to do it. But I'm just not up to date on what his current plans are. It's a terrific piece of software as it is. I have not used it on Windows, but I believe you can easily install it there. I've only used it on an Android device, both my tablet and my phone. And I just wish I could tell you what's planned, but I just don't have that information. This is K6JM.
WE.
No problem. I just wanted to get a little bit more out of you on that Shoutbox post, which I appreciate. We haven't had much discussion about Blue DV lately, and I'm glad we're having it tonight. WB5EKU, go ahead.
WB5EKU. Yeah, I don't know what's planned, but I do use the Flum TV. I have been using it for a couple of months now. I've used it on my laptop computer. I've used it on my desktop computer, and I also used it on my Winbook, the little inexpensive Windows tablet that Micro Center sells. Use it on that. Surprisingly, I take it on a cruise. I took it on a cruise because, RF inside of a room on a cruise, or trying to get approval on a cruise ship for ham radio gear is tough, But I don't know why they don't like it, but they allow GMRS, I'm sorry, they allow FRS, but yeah, anyway. I use it on the cruise ship, and surprisingly with the, let's see, how can I put it, crappy internet service they have on cruise ships, it worked great. So I don't need to take a radio whenever you go on a cruise. It's a Blue TV software with a little Windows tablet or a Windows laptop, and Flum TV. Really, really neat. Hopefully they'll be adding Fusion and P25 to it also. But, that remains to be seen. WB5EKU.
W6.
I appreciate it, Don. W6KD, go ahead.
Interestingly, this morning, I heard N9KO, Cal. I don't think he's on. I don't see him on the dashboard anyway, but he was doing radio checks with Blue DV through a Thumb DV, and he did them both on DMR and D-Star. And according to PA7LIM's webpage, it also does Fusion, either YSF reflectors or the I think it's FCS reflectors. I've never messed with those, but according to at least according to the website, it does all of those, and I know for a fact it does D-Star and DMR because I heard Cal tested it this morning. So yeah, this looks like a multi-mode version of WinDV that's actively being developed and supported. So I suspect a topic of much more discussion to come back in the W6KD.
Oh, I agree. There needs to be more said, and we're getting, we need to get stations here that operate that device and, can help us out in discussing it. Plus, no doubt there'll be further discussion we can find in the web. But in the meantime, all we have to do is just wait for KC8YQL. And there he is. Go ahead.
Go Pacificon. Doggone it, I wanted to be there. But you guys are just too far from me, Mike. Move closer to Ohio. Can I get you guys to move to the east a little? I'm not asking much at all, am I? Hey, I got a question for you guys, and I ought to already know the answer. I got some Fusion guys over in Colorado trying to hear your net tonight. And I see Johnny's 310 and the other YSF reflectors on your roundtable webpage, but I guess they're not connected to the net. So can I tell these guys on Fusion where they can listen to the net? Is there any other connections? I guess there's not an FCS, obviously, right? Which they're a little flaky. Guess I really wouldn't suggest the YSF. Or not the YSF, but I meant to say the FCS is what I meant to say. But anyway, comment was I'm on the Blue DV, and I'm really shocked that you guys don't know more about it. I've been using it forever like Don, and the shout goes out there to Don, EKU. And I've ran it on D-Star before, but it's a little hit and miss sometimes. It will connect sometimes it won't. So it's a little finicky. I have never got Fusion to connect. But you know what? Sitting here just thinking that this last copy I downloaded from David's website there, I haven't tried Fusion on this, so maybe it will work, and I haven't even tried it. But at any rate, I guess I've been playing around with Jimmy's Zoom spot there too much and haven't been playing with the Blue DV because I've had it running forever. And it does work pretty well. Just a little flaky on other modes, but hey, you know, we all got to start from somewhere, and it actually works quite well on D-Star and sometimes on DMR. Back to you, Mike. Where can we connect to this net on Fusion? Or can't we? KC8YQL, I should already know that, shouldn't I?
T.
Yeah, I don't think we offer that yet, but let's get a definitive answer. K6KD, go ahead.
Okay, well, Mike and Bill, one way is if you're using a Fusion radio with an open spot, and which will convert from Fusion to DMR. Not very well because of the levels, but it will do it. And you can link to XLX313 as a DMR master. So that is one way to do it. We do have, not to be confused with XRF002 and XRF310, we do have Fusion reflectors, YSF002 and YSF310. Those are not yet linked. They may be at a future time. As far as FCS, the answer is no, and I don't think they ever will because they're not open source. But possibly in the future for YSF, and today sort of with the open spot. Back to net.
All right, thank you, John. So there you go, Bill. And I think we've mentioned this in the past that we're snooping around, doing something with Fusion. We know that it's not as popular as the other modes, but given the YSF reflectors and some of the capabilities, you never know. But for present, there's not a direct link. You have to go about it in the manner that John mentioned. So. Bill, back to you. KC8YQL, go ahead.
Okie dokie, Mike. Well, I was busting at the bridges because I did connect Johnny's 310 into the YSF2, actually 002. And I couldn't wait to get Jimmy's Zoom spot linked over there because I thought for sure maybe they was linked already. And I was going to sneak over and tell the Colorado guys to come on over. But then, silly me, I went back and read the website. And it tells you right on your website that I guess they are not linked. But it looks like maybe in the future they will be. And gosh forbid that any Yaesu dealers or Yaesu company men's listening to me right now, but hey, Mike, for $500 and I guess it's $600 now to buy a brand new dual mode repeater. I'm not telling you anything, right? You can make it into a multi-mode repeater, and yeah, $500-$600. How can you go wrong? Hope nobody from Yaesu's listening to this right now. They ain't, are they? Enough for me, and you guys keep up the good work, and we'll turn it back to net control, and we're going to try to upload or update the host files here right now on Jimmy's little Zoom board, and we can't thank Jim enough, by the way, KI6ZUM, for developing the stuff he's worked on. I need to give him a huge pat on the back. One of these days I'm going to have to run into him. He was at Dayton a couple years ago, and I wasn't able to make it, and I really felt bad over that. And not only was Goose in the same booth with Jim, but what's his name? Well, Jonathan was there too, I guess. I just found that out a couple nights ago. Jonathan Naylor and Goose and KI6, all three was together in Goose's booth. Now, how cool would that have been? Wow. If K6KD and W6KD would have been there, it would have been a full-fledged party, wouldn't it? And you too, of course, Mike. Anyway, back to you. Hope you guys ain't getting too big of a head now, KC8YQL. And we want to thank other Jim. I think it was Jim, wasn't it, that went overseas there with Val. Excellent presentation on Ham Nation. And I got good news coming about Ham Nation too. The new owner of Heathkit may be coming on the Ham Nation netcast. He wanted me to get a hold of Bob Heil, and I did. And hopefully Bob and Andy, the new owner of the Heathkit, met at Pacificon, and maybe he'll show up on the Ham Nation netcast. We're hoping. Haven't got confirmation of that. If I find out, I'll be sure to let you guys know. Back to that, KC8YQL.
All right, Bill. Well, I can tell you how you can go wrong, and that is setting up a repeater like that. You can spend far less money buying a multi-mode access point or hotspot and an inexpensive DMR radio or whatever, or fusion radio if you like, depending upon the hotspot that you choose. That would be a far better selection and far more flexible and usable and mobile and available than spending all that money taking a fusion repeater, converting it to otherwise. Although, the equipment out there to do that exists, and it seems that those that have it work. But, it seems the move is not to repeaters, but is to multi-mode hotspots, especially for those in the open source digital world. Bill, thanks for being with us. All right, let me just take a break to see if there are stations that wish to chime in on what we've talked about thus far before we move on to another topic. Or if you're sitting on something that you just need to spill the beans about here on the round table before we move on, we'll take you now. Please key up.
K6FED.
There was a double. I copied K6FED. Other station, key up again, please. And I got KC5ALH. Thank you. First, we say hello to K6FED. Go ahead.
N6HK in the group. This is K6FED. Good evening, Mike. I just wanted to say on the Blue DV for Windows, it works pretty well the way David has it set up. I'm running the Pi DV sitting on a Raspberry Pi, and I have it set up as a server. Northwest Digital Radio gives you the instructions on setting up that AMBE server. So you can actually go into the Blue DV software and put in either a DNS name or a IP address and access it from a remote location. A couple of guys are doing that now with the thumb DVs rather than having the thumb DV plugged into the laptops, or they just plug them into a Raspberry Pi and then annotate the IP address and then go sit somewhere on a laptop and access them remotely. So that, like Jim was saying, that PyDV software has definitely moved a long way over.
Well, very cool. Thanks for that information. KC5ALH, your turn. Go ahead.
Hello there, Mike, and good evening to everybody on the roundtable tonight. I heard you talking about the Blue DV software in combination with the Northwestern Digital Radio Thumb DV. Well, here is such thing. I have the Blue DV for Windows installed on my company laptop here in the office, and there is a Northwestern Digital Radio Thumb DV. In fact, it was one of the first models, the one that goes slower, that is plugged here in the laptop, and I'm using it with the WinDV not the WinDV, but the Blue DV software, and talking to you right now on that combination. So, really don't have anything else to add other than it works great. It can do a lot more than just the WinDV software that Fred had, and it's really exciting to be able to use the other modes with a thumb DV. For a little while, we were kind of tucking those away in the drawers and stuff, but now with this newer version of the Blue DV software, I'm going to have to get something where I can talk. Now that the Blue DV software is out and supports the thumb DV, well, it's given the thing new life, and so I'm excited to see that and using it right now to talk to you. Okay, back over to you, Mike, and I'll continue to listen. And this is KC5ALH, Hall in Big Spring, Texas.
Well, we also appreciate you chiming in on the Blue DV. It just kind of went away, and not that it went away because there wasn't any interest in it. Certainly there are a great many stations that have the Blue DV and the software and have putting it to use and found great success and follow the manufacturers and makers of that. But I just hadn't heard that it's you can run it on WinDV or as a replacement to WinDV, and now with the ThumbDV as you described, I mean, to me that's new. That may not be new to anybody else. But I think probably this would be worth getting a little bit more in-depth, that is to discuss it, the particulars of from, what do you need to set it up to, how you go about putting it to use and I got to tell you, it sounded good. Both of you guys sounded excellent. So, well, I don't know if Frank was on his Blue DV, but very cool. We appreciate your contribution. All right, any more stations about that? Well, I need to get my tongue out and slap it around a little bit as well. Anything further on what we've discussed thus far before we pick up another topic, or if you just can't sit still until you key up and tell us what you know about open source digital voice. We'll take you now. Please key up.
KE0.
KE0, AYJ. Go ahead.
Thanks for the KH in that group one more time. I forgot to mention, here in about 2 months, San Juan, Puerto Rico is going to go with a full stack that was donated to them. So we're going to be over there helping him, Oscar Resto, KP4RF. We're going to assist him putting that up and getting it on the air. One of the highest points out there with full connectivity, and going to be lining up with a reflector and everything. And he's going to be running IRC. So I think everything's going to be fine and dandy. We'll see how that goes. A few more pieces of equipment to pick up for him and get it shipped over there, and then it's done. I just wanted to mention that. So we'll look forward to that, and then we can follow the progress directly that way. KE0 AYJ, back to that.
Well, how interesting. Well, you can never have enough D-Star stacks, as far as I'm concerned. But, yeah, once you find out what reflector they decide to settle in on, or if they set up a new one, let us know right away, and we'll be able to jump in there and listen in and maybe even talk to you as well, depending upon the radios that you bring with you. I'm assuming that you have at least one D-Star radio, and with the Icom stack going up, especially with the full stack. Wow. All right, appreciate that update. We'll take the next station. Please key up.
KC8.
KC8YQL, go ahead.
Yeah, Mike, I just want to say that I thought it was awesome what Mr. Duffy did for DX Engineering to help the folks out that went overseas. So kudos goes out to DX Engineering and for all the folks that went over there. That was really a deal like going in the military and going somewhere you don't know if you're going to get shot at or taken out or whatever. I mean, anything, the sky was the limit for those folks who went over there. So I'm just tickled that everybody made it back okay, and the way it sounds, things have calmed down a little bit somewhat over there too. So hopefully it'll continue to be that way. And also wanted to comment on, I got the very first thumb DV ever made at Dayton Hamfest. Sorry about that, I think I hit my timer. I got it off of Northwest Digital, I believe, at Hamvention, if I remember right. I think I got it there. Anyway, it was the first one out the door, and you heard me talking on it a little bit ago on the Blue DV software. And it was on an old junky Windows 7 computer. Now I'm running Jimmy's Zoom board, and hopefully you're hearing me okay now. My first time, I think I keyed it up over here on the constellation of your net reflectors. How does the Zoom board sound? Hopefully all right. KC8YQL, back to you, sir.
Well, it sounds great, as you always sound. So, well, I have about 4 or 5 other stations that have the same claim that you have, that they got the first thumb DV off the production line, and we're going to have to get you guys together, and so you can either duke it out or flip coins or show certificates or sales receipts to really determine who's the winner of the first one out the line. But I'll take your word for it, because you were the first to pop up on the net with that information. Appreciate it, Bill. And turning to the shout box, and speaking of Blue DV, W6KD was kind enough to post the Blue DV website, and you can get all the latest information there. We appreciate that. And as well as K6JM's comments about the DV Mega with the Blue Stack on Blue DV. And then he also posts some other things. It looks like we may have another topic pending there, but I want to get through the ones that have come to at least my attention here thus far. And speaking of which, one of them is there's been, I don't want to call them complaints, because there really aren't complaints, they're just people scratching their heads, and it was over GPS and their radios. And they're saying, hey, look, I want to go to APRS-FI, and I've got it turned on allegedly on my hotspot, and I'm using one of the reflectors in the constellation, but it's not showing up. I'm not showing up, these stations ask, or why aren't I showing up on APRS-FI? Of course, with a brief note like that, it's difficult to determine, what's going on. I can just about guarantee you it's not the reflector. But I thought this would be an interesting topic to kind of clear the air. We don't talk a lot about GPS. It seems that more people are interested in trying to get their DMR radio to report GPS. I'm not exactly sure why they would do that, and perhaps with Brandmeister it might provide some locations that are comparable to APRS-FI. But as far as the hotspot, the D-Star, and the reflector world, particularly the extra reflector world, it seems to work just fine. But given that there seems to be a misunderstanding or problems develop. Sometimes you don't read the manual. Sometimes you have a hotspot, and it worked fine when you had just a radio and a repeater, but now the hotspot doesn't work as well, and I thought it'd be worth exploring. So, as you know, I hate to start a topic that is the discussion, and I'm not going to begin tonight, and so instead, I'm going to call for stations who wish to give us a hand on multi-mode hotspots, GPS broadcast, that is, not broadcast, but data, and why or why not you would not appear on APRS-FI, and perhaps help some of those out that, would like to get, would like to get back to APRS-FI because they used to on their D-Star only radio on a repeater, and it doesn't change when you're on a reflector, I don't think, but I don't know. Stations, please, Kia.
W6KD.
Well, I see Bob's hands up. and, well, just probably one-handed this time. W6KD. Go ahead.
Hey, Mike. Yeah, let's see. On the D-Star side of things, even in a multi-mode hotspot, and I'm talking about MMDVM, MMDVM uses IRC DDB gateway for D-Star. So MMDVM is, if you will, a superset of the old IRC DDB gateway software that's used in images such as D-Star Commander and Western D-Star. And then the MMDVM images, including KB5RAB and PyDV, or is it PyStar? I always get them mixed up. I think it's PyStar. Sorry. Anyway, those are MMDVM based images, but MMDVM still uses IRC DDB on the D-Star side, and the interface to the APRS system occurs in your hotspot, or in your gateway, I should say. Whether the gateway is your hotspot, or it could be a repeater running a companion program to implement the what we call DPRS functionality. DPRS is the plug-in to APRS, and what it does is it strips embedded GPS information out of the low-speed data side of D-Star, of a D-Star stream, and forwards it via the internet to the APRS server, and that's how it gets into the APRS.FI mapping system, where you can go in and look your call sign up and see your positions. And so, I heard a couple of stations talk sometime in the last week, and they seem to think that the reflector had something to do with it, and that's not the case at all. If you have a Raspberry Pi hotspot running off a cellular connection, in fact, you don't even need to be connected to a reflector. You don't have to be connected to anything in the D-Star world. The DPRS link is a separate internet connection to APRS.FI. So as long as your radio is sending a properly formatted GPS position in the low-speed data stream, and that's let me change hands here and reset. Anyway, that's a radio-specific thing. There's a radio-specific ID string, and then a format that you need to use, and that's probably more detail than I want to go into here. But as long as you're sending a properly formatted GPS string in your low-speed data, and that's set up in your hotspot. Set up in your radio, and it's received by your hotspot, and if it's formatted properly, and you have the DPRS enabled in the hotspot, which is done, in the GUI for the IRC DDB gateway software, then it strips that GPS. It doesn't actually remove the information, but it reads it, grabs it, and then forwards it through the internet to the APRS.FI server, and every time the radio transmits, that occurs. And like I said, you don't have to be connected to a reflector. So you could, in theory, have a Raspberry Pi hotspot that's not connected, not linked to anything. And as long as it's got a good internet connection, a good cellular connection, it'll still forward your position your position reports on the APRS.FI. The peripheral issue is that there are several settings in the ICOM radios. You can have it transmit. Obviously, every time you key the push to talk up and talk, it'll be embedded in your stream. Then you can turn on a beacon that causes the radio to automatically transmit, and that'll include your position as well. At 3 or 5 minute at varied intervals, depending on how you have it set. Although that is a very, very, it's sort of a rude thing. It's a bad operating practice to turn that beacon on and then connect to a repeater or a reflector somewhere. and then essentially what you're doing is automatically kerchunking everything that's connected downstream every time that radio keys up to transmit the position beacon. So if you're driving down the road and you're not talking to anybody, the best thing to do is unlink your gateway. And like I said, the position reports will continue independent of the connection, independent of any kind of a link from your hotspot gateway to anything else in the D-Star world. It can be completely unlinked from a reflector or another repeater, whatever, just sitting there. And the DPRS link is done over the internet reset. One more time.
N1.
Now, the one last thing is, and I can't really answer this question, but there are a number of DMR radios now that include GPS. And to my knowledge, and my knowledge might be dated, but my belief at this point is that there isn't a mechanism in place just yet to take the GPS information out of a DMR stream and do the same thing. If that's a possibility in the multimode software, I'm not aware of it. It could be, but I'm not aware of it yet. But I know that, for example, the Hytera MD390s come with a GPS option, as well as other radios, some of the Hyteras as well. And to my knowledge, that's not being used yet, but I'm sure at some point it'll be coming. So that's that's kind of the operating overview of how it works, sort of a review of how DPRS works. And back to the net, W6 Kitty.
N1B.
Bob, thank you. I am recognizing N1DOT and K6KD. First, we say hello to Ken, N1DOT. Go ahead.
Yeah, as a side note, only the ICOMs support GPRS. GSTOP position reporting or packet reporting. And it's a one-way and it's essentially a one-way protocol. You cannot receive position reports. On the Kenwood THD-74, they do send GPS data, but it's in the wrong format. Okay, so gateways like IRC-DB Gateway and others, they will not properly take the data and send it to APRS.FI. But on the Kenwood radio, there's a full implementation of APRS. So you always have the ability to beacon that into an APRS network via 144.39, and that is full bidirectional, the text messaging and everything. N1DOT, that's the only downside to the Kenwood.
All right, Ken, appreciate that. I didn't know that Kenwood is not capable except in the circumstances that you described. Thank you. K6KD, go ahead.
Okay, Mike, I just wanted to point out that on the dashboards, the 002, 310, and 555, the call signs in the last herd are actually live links to APRS FI, and it'll show the map if unless the call sign's not in the database, it'll indicate that as well. So that it is the links under gateways, either the first two sections of the dashboard are not live links, but the last herd are live links to APRS FI. It turns out on the XLX dashboard, XLX313, the last herd is called user/modules. Those call signs are also live links, but those are live links to QRZ rather than the APRS FI. Just thought I'd point that out. Back to net, K6KD.
All right, John. So what it comes down to is, how do you want your location reported? And, certainly connecting to a reflector will show, and usually it shows up like in orange and other colors, but I was scrolling through, and some of the dashboards have that some don't. But when you click on the call sign, you can, in fact, get it should bring up the APRS-FI map, one of the providers of that, and you can take a look at where a station's at. On the other hand, if you want to drop breadcrumbs, so to speak, you should unlink from the reflector and or repeater, and well, it wouldn't be and or. Well, I guess it could be. It could be on a D-Star repeater and connected to a reflector, but you should unlink and then carry on, because you're still going to be reporting to the APRS-FI map, and people can still follow you around, and you're not junking up the system or showing up on a reflector or everybody having to listen to this. Of course, auto beaconing and should never be turned on except in extreme situations. But having the automatic beaconing function at specific intervals, I can see that. But basically, you want APRS to be transmitted each time that you key up, and that's one of the settings that you can choose rather than quote unquote auto beaconing. All right, stations wishing to contribute to this topic, or if you have a question, please key up. All right, nothing seen or heard. Just so everybody understands, and I say this, nobody here will take offense if you see things a different way, or if you have a different experience with this topic or any other. We'll welcome your input and evaluate it and talk about it. Just like anything else, we want to get out the correct information. We do not engage in guessing unless someone says, hey, I'm going to guess about this. You don't hear that too often, but then again, if you just guess, you might be called on. But in the meantime, feel free to jump in, and especially if there's something that you heard that you don't understand, it's best to get them answered now while the stations are talking about it. Of course, if you're listening to this on a recorded basis, that isn't possible. On the other hand, you can certainly bring that back up. That is, if you can be with us live and bring it up next week, because I have a segment at the beginning of the roundtable where topics that were talked about on the preceding Thursday can be rediscussed by those that listen remotely or by recording. Also, don't feel shy about using the shout box during the week. We clean it out at the end of the roundtable, but you can post your thoughts about topics that were discussed. In case JM posted a thought about a statement I made, and I certainly appreciate that. We try to get as broad a viewpoint as possible, as many thoughts on the topic as we can elicit. But you can also use the shout box to list topics that you'd like to have discussed, or other things that you think would be of interest to others that we can provide here during the Thursday night D-Star Roundtable. And that is this net, as we come around to me, is the 9 o'clock hour, but all that means to everybody else, unless you're on the West Coast or the Pacific time zone, then we've been running for about 2 hours. So let me once again just check to see, now that I've given this little speech, if anyone has any questions, comments, concerns about APRS and getting GPS reported that is your location working, and also if somebody knows what the status is of DMR, or that is GPS on DMR. I agree with Bob. The last I heard is that you can spend extra money, and there was a big debate going way back when DMR first arose, before Brandmeister was even thought of, about, I better order that GPS-enabled radio, not realizing that there was no way to put it to use in the amateur service. Maybe that's changed, and if you know, I'd appreciate hearing. So we'll take a break. Stations, please key up.
KA1GM.
KA1GMN. Welcome, and go ahead.
In 6AKH, the group, this is KA1GMN. This is Phil in Euless, Texas. And concerning GPS being able to make its way through the Brandmeister system, that is in place now. And they do have instructions on their website. And I have an MDE 390, and it works just fine. You do have to make some changes to your user profile that's on Brandmeister.
and there are specific talk groups depending what region you're in, where you send where you transmit your GPS information to. Brandmeister has now set up a gateway that will handle GPS transmissions from HTs like the MD390. Get it in the right format and forward it to APRS5. Back to net from KA1GMN.
Well, Phil, we appreciate that, and thanks for joining us on the roundtable. I didn't know. So the GPS on DMR through Brandmeister, I understand that you have to change some settings in your user profile, but can you, does Brandmeister extract the GPS data on the talk group of your selection, or do you have to go to a specific talk group, or maybe a group of talk groups that allow or will decode and transmit GPS? And where does it end up at? Do you have to go to the Brandmeister host to look at a map, or can it be reported on APRS-FI? If you know, I just find it interesting that they provided that functionality, and good for them. KA1GMN, go ahead.
Yeah, sure thing, Mike. In your code plug for the MD390, on each channel there's a separate section for the GPS. And in this section, you can either, enable or disable the GPS, but there's also a field there where you can specify a talk group where the GPS information is being sent to. So, for example, if you have a channel set up for, let's say, TAC 311, then you go down to that section and enable the GPS and plug in the, I'm sorry, I don't have it off the top of my head. Periodically, the MD390 will go ahead, and when it transmits the GPS information, it's actually going to the talk group we specified in the GPS section. The only drawback is, obviously if the channel is busy, then you'll get a timeout. So that's, one drawback, but for the most part, it works. And yeah, you'll go to APRS-FI. Back to net.
All right, Phil, thank you. I appreciate you answering my questions. I did not know, and now I do, and we all do. Of course, there are probably those on DMR that are thinking, well, this is new stuff, and we've looked at it, and we don't know why everybody else doesn't know about it. Well, not everything is, known about, things change so quickly. We talk about the digital voice, especially the open source digital voice arena, as slow moving, but at the same time, new features pop up and capabilities arise that really aren't widely disseminated. And, of course, there are reasons why these nets, take place so that we can disseminate that information. And so knowing about this is important. I appreciate the contributions of stations who do know. So anything further on GPS APRS or questions, please key up.
No, I don't have anything else other than I discovered this net about 3 weeks ago, and I really appreciate this net being here. I really enjoy listening to the discussions. This is KA1GMN.
Well, we appreciate the kind words and welcome. That's what we're here for. All right, let's take a pause, and I want to find out if there are topics that you guys want to talk about. We'll take general questions of any nature that is regarding, the things that we discuss here on the roundtable. We certainly don't want to talk about sunspots unless you want to link that to how that's going to help, D-Star and DMR and the digital modes and getting more of the low-band guys attracted to it. But you know what I mean. The point being is that we don't want to get off topic, but sometimes other nets where they just don't have the expertise or haven't had the net running long enough to be able to provide technical answers to technical questions, or if you've been sitting on a topic and would like to ask us to talk about it, or you can start it, or maybe think about it for future time. We'll take you now. We call this the open segment. It's open as to questions and topics. And if there are none, we'll move on. But this is a pretty good time to take a break to do just that. So stations, please key up. Well, I didn't get much of a response there. So what new did you guys stumble upon in the equipment or firmware, or we'll even entertain vaporware, but only to the extent that there's actually someone that you saw at a Hamfest or in a magazine ad where, even though it's vaporware, it's around the corner, just, BS vaporware products that, like at Dayton, that there was probably a dozen or more manufacturers that were claiming they're going to produce all kinds of stuff and never did. But then again, that's the fun of, I guess, the vendor section. It's, you got to take it on faith and investigate it, or fully investigate it yourself. Anyway, that's beside the point. The point being is, what's new in hardware or technology that you believe we should know about, or put it another way, that you believe I don't know about yet? Stations, please key up.
W6KDM.
W6KD, go ahead.
I noticed that the latest edition of the ARRL rag sheet, QST, has a review of ICOM's new ICR 8600 general receiver. It's a SDR receiver, sort of like sort of a receive version of the 7300, I guess. It looks like it might be even in the same cabinet. It's 5 kilohertz to 3 gigahertz and multi-mode. And interestingly, it has D-Star, so it'll decode D-Star. It also has P25 and NXDN built into it, but not DMR and not Fusion. and of course, AM wideband or stereo AM, wideband FM, the standard stuff you would expect to find on a general coverage receiver. But interestingly, they obviously have either the hardware, the AMBI decoding hardware, or they've got the firmware license from DVSI, one or the other. But they chose, having the capability in there, they still chose not to include DMR or Fusion. And so, once again, the ICOM engineers and their marketing guys have got it just dead wrong. I don't know why anybody would buy a $2,700 general coverage receiver that only has a couple of the digital modes in it. But there it is. Anyway, the review, though, is in the current edition of QST, and it's something, I guess relatively new from ICOM. So back to net, W6KD.
Well, that's interesting. Now, so, Bob, do you get a sense that this is a receiver, a general coverage receiver, geared towards the amateur market? I realize that these receivers can probably be purchased by anyone, and certainly SWL types would find this interesting, except for the fact that they can't listen to, fairly popular digital mode DMR. But is this something that is geared toward the amateur, or is it more a commercial product that where you just choose this ICOM with not having all the digital modes over some other maker of wideband SDR receivers? W6KD, go ahead.
Well, I can't say for sure who they market it to. Obviously, it's sold at HRO, and it would be of of some use in a ham shack. I don't know anybody personally that uses one of those in conjunction with a regular radio, but I believe they have sort of like the ALC circuit or whatever that you would find in a linear or whatever, where you can daisy chain it into your transmitter so that you can turn the front end off when you're transmitting. I think so. I wouldn't stake my life on it, but I think like the old R4000 had it. But at any rate, it's kind of, it could be both. A lot of people that are hardcore SWL types buy those sorts of receivers, and this is an SDR with fairly good vitals, in terms of its third order IMD and all that kind of stuff. It's actually, I think it reviewed fairly well as a receiver, but just very odd that they would make the decision to put the decoder into the radio, but leave out a couple of the major modes just because ICOM doesn't sell them in the ham world or something. I gotta believe that's why they did it. They don't include Fusion, they don't include DMR, but they have NXD and MP25, which use the same MB plus 2 vocoder, so it had to be a conscious decision to leave them out. So, it's the kind of thing that anybody could go buy. And I really don't know where outside of HRO they're sold, but I would guess probably some of the, there might be some electronic shops that sell that stuff. I really have no idea where else you might find one of those.
Well, at Dayton is usually some of the major receiver manufacturers display new radios, and I recall a couple of Daytons ago there was a new one that was software driven. It was the Cat's Meow, and it covered everything. And the big thing, of course, was that it allowed D-Star and DMR and all the rest. Now, I don't know, whether it in fact worked as was described. It was fairly expensive. You could buy them there. And it was talked about here on the roundtable only because at the time there was no capability of listening to other digital modes, or for that matter, to be able to also monitor or scan D-Star. Of course, this was a time when there were fewer D-Star reflectors and probably almost not, very, very few DMR repeaters. And people just wanted to scan those things to see what popped up. Today, I don't know that you could even find enough channels to program in every reflector if you were to go through that. Well, see, I don't know how they would receive that because it would have to be on the air. So these type of receivers, I presume, would be responsive to signals on the air. I don't, maybe it connects to the internet, but it doesn't seem like. Well, you couldn't connect to a reflector unless you were licensed. So this doesn't make any sense. In fact, I'm talking gibberish probably. But the point being is that there were other makers that did it all, and it kind of came and went. So I wonder, maybe somebody can help us out. I mean, as an amateur, how do you put a high-end general coverage receiver like this one? It doesn't have to be the Icon, but this particular type of fairly comprehensive featured SDR receiver. How would you put that to use, and how do you put it to use? Let's put it that way. I'm assuming we'll hear from stations, if we do, that have them. How do you use them in conjunction with your amateur radio station? Just be fun to learn. Stations, please key up.
K6JM.
K6JM, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, Mike. I have kind of an old-fashioned view of this because I think I was in 7th grade, maybe 8th grade, when I got interested in listening to what we referred to as shortwave radio. It was a lot of fun. A friend of mine whose father was chief engineer at the local, this is North Iowa, radio and TV stations, and his dad was a ham, then got interested and got as novice, and I followed suit and got going there. But I was a shortwave listener before I became a ham and really enjoyed it. And of course, in those days, we had separate receivers and transmitters and a transmit receive switch. And to my left here, I have a Collins 75A4 and a Central Electronics 100V and its companion linear. And of course, to operate it, which it does operate, I have to have a transmit receive switch. I think nowadays there's lots better ways to do it. But it is fun to be able to go to just about any frequency. And with high quality, like what Bob is describing in this new one, it would be interesting. I'm not interested in spending that kind of money right now, but if I won the lottery, I'd probably go out and get one. Back to you. This is K6JM.
Gotcha, Jim. I appreciate it. Well, of course. Although these radios are getting to be the scanners, that's the service. These receivers are getting to be pricier. They do a whole lot more, and they certainly have a lot of cool features. It's an expensive addition to the shacks you described, and possibly they might even outperform the receiver section of many low-band radios, transceivers. I don't know. Anyone else that can tell us how you put your modern receiver to use in your shack to augment your hobby? Stations, please key up. Well, nothing seen or heard. It's kind of an unusual discussion, but we appreciate Bob bringing this to our attention. There's just so much new gear. I mean, you go to Amfest, you guys have been there, and there's all kinds of stuff. It's not even made for the amateur market, but it's cool gear that can be put to use. And I don't mean just DMR, but a lot of stuff. All right, anybody else sitting on or reading about or getting a loan for some new gear that's out or soon to be out that would support those of us who love living in the open source digital voice world? We'd love to hear from you. Please key up. All right, so nothing further there. We had a discussion, and I just want to touch upon this real briefly. The discussion last week about FCC ID requirements, and the discussion was, well, look, on an Easter radio, it displays on everybody's screen, so who cares? And of course, we pointed out, stations pointed out, that you never know where your signal is going to end up, especially in the modern digital voice world, and given the connectivity not just from reflectors and multimode digital repeaters, but more specifically transcoders and other ways to take your signal from one mode to another. And on the end of the transmission, you cannot be assured that your call sign will be displayed on anything. While I think we pointed out that there's no direct demand in the FCC rules or requirement, that explicitly says that if you're operating in the digital mode, that you also have to, voice ID in addition to the digital ID. So in the modern world, I mean, going back several years, stations shrugged their shoulders and said, hey, I don't need to announce, I can just key up, because there it is. There's my call sign in your radio, and what more do you want? And, through to today where you just can't bank upon it being a call sign on a screen. And plus, what's the harm in providing your call sign every 10 minutes? Well, we did take another look at it, and let me call upon someone that's taken a look at this and did so because he wanted to conclude the discussion. I don't want to spend a ton of time on it because I think ultimately it's not really clear in the FCC rules whether you must voice ID in the digital age, but under the circumstances and given that, there are people who are not staring at their screen and sure would like to know what station it is they're listening to because they may want to talk to them. So it's just a matter of operator courtesy, especially to those stations operating mobile or walking around on a hotspot with an HT that may or may not have a screen, especially if you're on a multi-mode and maybe running around with a DMR radio. Not all of them have screens set to display that data. So K6KD, do you mind just spending a very few moments on cleaning up this discussion from last Thursday? K6KD, go ahead.
Okay, well, Mike, just to be real brief on it, in looking at the FARs, and I don't know if there's any case law or what, if there'd been any enforcement or anything like that, but my reading of it is it's a matter of interpretation. The question is, do the call signs in the V-Star header or the slow speed data qualify as IDing? And if you, the way I look at it, if you look at the rules very literally, you could make a case they don't. But you could also, under interpretation, say it may not be within the letter of the law, but it's within the spirit of the law. And you could go back and forth on it. So I think that given the fact that we can transcode where the call sign definitely does not go into the DMR system, it's probably just a good idea to voice ID anyway, just as a matter of good practice. So that and the idea is every 10 minutes and at the conclusion of a transmission. So anyway, back to you, K6KD.
N1.
Thank you, John. That's really what I wanted to hear. N1 DOT, what do you think? Go ahead.
Well, as far as Fusion is concerned, every time you key up your radio, it transmits your ID. D-Star, every time you key up your radio, it transmits your ID. This has been hashed out over the years. DMR, on the other hand, it's ID driven. Okay? Both D-Star and Fusion transmit a call sign. T25, NXDN, and DMR do not transmit call signs. They're based on IDs. Now, IDs can be translated so it shows up on the user radio, but in the spirit of the law, every time you key down, even DMR repeaters have to send a CWID to be legal on the amateur bands. I know my MMDBM does. When it is idle, it identifies the station call. Because those other modes, T25 and DMR, do not transmit call signs in any way. So you have to verbally ID them, so the person on the other end that's monitoring the channel knows who you are. Because if they don't have it programmed in the contact list in the DMR radio, they won't know who you are. All of it will show up to be an ID. And on a P25 radio, there is no way. I know I've got a Motorola P25 radio here too. There's no way to program in a call sign into the P25 radio, so you have to verbally identify them.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me about that. It's a point we just talked last time, but I missed this time that for those radios and protocols that are modes actually that do not transmit anything other than IDs. Yeah, I mean it's no big to do, and I think the reasonable requirement, even though there really isn't any explicit FCC opinion letter, directive, regulation, or rule that says that under the circumstances of the digital voice world that you can avoid IDing or that you must ID, I think it's reasonable to imply from the rules that your failure to ID, even though you may reasonably believe that your call sign is being transmitted, whether that's right or good belief or not, could land you into trouble. I don't think there's a lot of cases about that, except for stations that jam and, do malicious activity where whether they identify by the call sign is really a secondary issue. But this topic came up from stations that were complaining that somebody, they had throw their ID out with every single transmission, and they say, for ID, and they do it about every 10 seconds, it seems, and there's just no need for it. I mean, it's annoying to others except for those that are, ID their call signs every 15 minutes, but and the distinction too here is that this is a bit different. When we ask you to quick key, while you're not giving your call sign, and I don't want it, frankly. In fact, I just assume that you not talk, just chunk it. I'll see your call sign. I'll call you, and then when you start talking, give your call sign. That's all it takes. And you don't have to announce your call sign just to key up. And that's just an example of where, you're going to get your call sign in there at the beginning of the actual voice transmission. But for chunking, I see as being different, if anybody really cares. Any further comment on this? This is nothing I want to spend any amount of time on, but, I thought that our discussion from last week, and especially at K6KD's prodding, warranted just a bit more time. So I'll just take anything else on this before we move on, please, Kia. K6JM, go ahead.
Okay, I thought that both John K6KD and Ken made good comments, and I agree. I'm one of those that interprets Part 97 to imply that the payloads or the headers of a D-Star transmission contain the call sign, so that you technically wouldn't have to, when you were transmitting, let's say you were doing simplex, peer-to-peer D-Star, you don't have to ID. The problem with that is it's a bad habit. Next time you're on analog, you're gonna forget. And then when you are on D-Star into a reflector that might be transcoded into some other DV mode like DMR or P25 in the future, your call is going to go out over RF without an ID. So I completely agree with John K6KD. It's just a good habit to always ID according to the normal analog rules. Back to you, K6JM.
Jim, thank you. That's reasonable. Anything yet? Anybody else? Key up now. All right. Well, I think that will conclude that. There is just a second, let me find this. I shuffled through my topic notes, and this got shuffled into the wrong spot, and I now have it sliding around too much here. Here it is. There was a question that came up about new ways of taking a hotspot or access point, however you want to call it, maybe something similar to the some of the new multi-mode devices that are out there, and adding Wi-Fi capability with a new device that is, and I'm struggling to find this here, but anyway, I wanted to see if anybody knew of something new out there that just connects to one of the jacks on God, I'm just losing it. Maybe I should just call it quits. But anyway, there's some new Wi-Fi devices that are cable-based that plug into some of the MMDVM devices and open ports, or open jacks, I meant, that instantly provide Wi-Fi connectivity where the hotspot itself did not. provide such connectivity. And it uses the power off the device, not requiring separate power. And I wanted to see if anyone knew about this stuff. I did not research this particular topic, but it was a question that came up in an email that I got. And I wrote back and said, well, such as, are you talking about OpenSpot? What are you talking about? And I didn't get a response, but is there something new out there in the Wi-Fi business that can be put to use on multi-mode hotspots that you guys are aware of? Because that is a particular problem, for example, with the OpenSpot, and I can see where it might come up as an issue on multi-mode boards with no inherent Wi-Fi capability. So, does anybody have anything to report on this? Please, Kia.
K6KD.
K6KD, go ahead.
Okay, well, concerning the OpenSpot, there is some discussion on the Shark RF forum, and the Norbert, who's part of the OpenSpot team, did indicate they were planning on coming out with an OpenSpot that had built-in Wi-Fi capability, but there's no release date. You know, in the meantime, it's a pretty straightforward thing to attach it to an Ethernet to Wi-Fi adapter. It does require separate power, but those devices work pretty well, and we've talked about them before. So anyway, back to net, K6KD.
Well, John, that could very well be it. That it's really some new feature or added feature, Wi-Fi added to some device, and perhaps the OpenSpot was it as opposed to a separate one. It just wasn't clear, and I, hopefully we'll get more information from the station that was suggesting that we talk about this, but then again, suggesting that we talk about something that they aren't particularly familiar with isn't very helpful to me or anyone else. But I just, if anybody knows what the latest is in this sort of thing, given that, making the OpenSpot Wi-Fi capable is a big to-do, so you can take it mobile, and there may be other hotspots that also do not have Wi-Fi. It was something I thought would be interesting. All right, well, we've been running about 2.5 hours. I am out of topics, at least topics that I think are fleshed out enough for us to be able to talk about, or if no one keeps up and wanting to talk about it, I can at least carry it on for a while. So I'm going to ask now if there's something that's on your mind you'd like to have us discuss. I realize I've asked this once, but that was about an hour and a half ago. So at this point, kind of leaning toward concluding this edition of the Thursday Night D-Star Roundtable, but without committing to closing it, because as you know, as long as we have stations wanting to participate, we try to avoid closing the doors down, but we just don't run all day and all night like we used to. So, if there's something on your mind or a technical question that you've been pondering, or based upon what you've heard thus far, you have a question or a thought or two, perhaps a suggestion, we'll take you on all of the above now, and you can do so, or I will take you now, if you tee up. Please do so now.
KC5A.
I have WB5EKU and KC5ALH. First, it's Don, WB5EKU. Go ahead.
SXH, WB5EKU. This isn't a question or anything, it's just much more of an observation. I have noticed that P25 activity is picking up somewhat. Nowhere near D-Star, nowhere near DMR, or even Fusion. But I think with the advent of the Zoom Spot and then with MMTVM open multi-mode repeaters, and hopefully Goose will come around and add P25 to the DV Mega. That's helping. I've noticed that there's on eBay some really good radios, P25 radios, Motorola, the ones that you can use as a weapon, coming around. But I do notice that there is more P25 activity in Southern California and nationwide, and also a lot in Europe and Canada and Australia, New Zealand. I see some calls. So the mode is picking up. I don't think it's something that should be pushed to the side because it actually sounds really good. It's an incredible sounding. Maybe it's the radio, but the digital voice, it sounds great. So okay, that's all. I wanted to notice, and hopefully we'll be seeing some more activity come around. NCCHH, WB5EKU, good net, Mike, and another great job.
Well, I appreciate you saying so until I pick on you again, which I'm going to do right now. What is the attraction of P25? Back to you, Don.
Same attraction that T-Star, TMR, and Fusion have. It's a digital mode. It's coming into its own. It's been used in public service now for a number of years. There are a couple of manufacturers that make radio. It is not an amateur protocol like DMR. Like D-Star or Fusion, but it's a great protocol. It works. So, what is the specific attraction? You got a great radio. You can call somebody over the head if they try to rob you. No, it's it works, and it's going to be coming along. I noticed Jonathan has asked on the email list for help getting P25 amateur into the P25NX system, which is all Quantar type repeaters that are out there, which will expand the usability of it and the number of people that are on P25. Hope it answered your question.
No, not really. I understand. Well, D-Star and Fusion, as you pointed out, are not commercial. And I get the difference in the feature set that makes DMR unique and attractive, not necessarily any better, and I don't want to get into that, who's better than the other. And the Fusion thing I kind of get, although that was a big clunk, but at least it was, initiated by a amateur manufacturer. Of course, Yaesu makes certainly commercial gear too, but again, it's amateur gear, and so something that's geared towards amateur, made for amateurs. I got that one, but P25, I'm just, now, part of it is that I haven't spent enough time studying it, but it's just more commercial gear, and I don't know what feature set it has, what repeaters it uses that are cheap. I mean, did some P25 repeater manufacturer dump a ton of them on the market after, they installed them in some factory, put them to use for a year, and now these guys want to move on to something else. It's just, I haven't understood, what would, why P25, other than, it is there, and I can make it into amateur use. I can put it to amateur use, so therefore, it's useful to amateurs. But that's not quite the same as the explanation I heard, which I initially rejected concerning DMR. But now the time has settled in, I'm not even going to make the joke I was going to make. So I just was wondering, and I appreciate you pointing that out, because now I won't, just if I happen to trip upon a P25 radio on the street or in the gutter, I won't just fling it into the dumpster. I'll actually maybe take it home before I throw it away. But Don, I thank you very much for that. KC5ALH, welcome back. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay there, Mike, and KC5ALH of Palm Beach Spring, Texas. I was going to comment, I still will, on the thing about the open spot and an easy way to make it Wi-Fi, to take it mobile and not have to use two powers and all those kinds of things. But now that this conversation came up, I wanted to say something about it too. We have a couple of guys, I can think of them right now, 2, 3 of them, right here in my local city, that have done the P25 thing. And I've actually had the chance to interview those guys and ask them why, and all that. And I can just tell you what they said, plain old. They told me that the reason that they got into it is because they prefer, there's something about heavy commercial grade equipment. They just like it. They have the commercial grade Kenwoods that are P25 radios, and they like the feel of them and the weight, and they feel like they're holding a quality rock solid radio. And plus, it does sound good. The audio is good, even though it's digital. It's not robotic and broken up in R2 and all that. I guess it could, but it has a good audio sound. And they like the quality of the radios. They can be turned up to a louder volume and withstand it. Things like that there. And so they have been enjoying the audio and the type of radio that's on it. However, there's no repeaters or hot spots that they're going through or anything like that in this area. So really, all they can do is just talk to one another on simplex through their radios. But they get a thrill out of it. They like it. And whoops, I timed out my own radio. I had it set on 2 minutes. They like it, and they like they've gotten off the beaten path. And they have enjoyed talking more privately, I guess, and amongst their little group, and they're holding commercial radios, and the audio and his quality is good. They turn up loud, and so they can be in their work trucks or whatever in noisy environments and still hear. And that's what I've heard from them. That may not satisfy you, but that was the answer that they gave when I asked them that question. And let me send it back over to you, Mike, and if you have anything else about that. Otherwise, I wanted to comment on the open spot and mobile Wi-Fi operation.
W.
All right, well, first of all, let me recognize the stations that are PDAP, WB5EKU, and W6TD. Now, see, what you just said initially about the P25, that makes sense to me. I get that. Because I like the old big radios. They aren't terribly convenient, but there is something to be said by having a radio that you could be up on a roof, have it fall out of your pocket, bag, holster, whatever, hit the ground, and it'll be fine and still working when you go down to retrieve it, except for maybe a tweaked antenna. And certainly, if you want to, especially the simplex mode, and play with them and talk to each other and not have to worry about, with little things like repeaters and reflectors, then I got it. But no, that helps me understand the mode. And that being said, I retract anything negative I would have said about it, or I did say about it. Well, for the most part. But I appreciate that. Anyway, I do have the stations recognized, but I do want you to proceed on your comments that you had in mind concerning adding Wi-Fi to multi-mode hotspots that otherwise don't have them. Go ahead. That is KC5ALH. Go ahead.
N6HKH.
You okay, Mike? I'll make it quick. That way these other guys can get in there. What I was going to say is what I've done with mine, I use my hotspot or my open spot mobile and with Wi-Fi connected to cellular data all the time. I've even taken a DV4 home and used it mobile just likewise. And then I also make these radio shows and Hamfest tailgates and different kinds of things. And I've even taken a credit card swiping machine, where you can accept credit cards And these things are all strictly designed for Ethernet operation only. They show to be Wi-Fi, not compatible with Wi-Fi. But you can take just one of these Wi-Fi to Ethernet bridge routers that has the WISP modes. There's several different models out there. TP-Link's real common. But the one that I use is a Glinet, Glinet, and it is an MT, Mike Tango, 300N. That's just another one that will, grab Wi-Fi out of the air, cellular or regular Wi-Fi, whichever, just any kind of Wi-Fi, convert it to Ethernet in the WISP mode, and, you can use your Ethernet-only device on Wi-Fi. And now the Glinet, the one that I'm using, it happens to also have a USB. Again, I haven't fixed my problem from earlier. It happens to have a USB power out port to where you can take your OpenSpot, plug it into that port on the Glinet router, and then have one USB cable from the Glinet router going into your USB source, like your cigarette lighter adapter in your car to give you a USB port. So it'll be only one cable coming from there going to the router, and then the OpenSpot plugs into the auxiliary USB output on the Glinet router, and that or your juice pack or whatever your USB original power source is, and that allows you just to have one source, one cable, and everything connected together. And I have been able to do that every time with no problem. Works great. Okay, Mike, back over to you. KC5ALH.
Hey, Paul, I appreciate that. Hadn't given that any thought, and what a great idea. So I appreciate you taking the time to share that with us. All right, I'm adding N1DOT to the list of stations that are pending that have keyed up. First, we return to WB5EKU. Go ahead.
Okay, well, that last station was talking. I think it was Paul. I pulled up that router. I have another comment, but I just pulled up that router, and on Amazon it's only $18.99. Wow. I'm about to hit the ad card button just to play with it. Anyway, just a little rebut, Mike. For P25, there are reflectors now. There's actually two for the Pacific. There's one for the United States right now. I think another one going to be added pretty soon. And there's one for one for Europe, and there's one for I guess it would be I'm not sure where it is, but it's 10, 100, 10, 200, 10, 300, 10, 400. Okay. I like P25. P25 radio is infinitely easier to program than a DMR radio. I find DMR radios atrocious program. I program them, and it's okay, but you can tell how commercial it was made. Yeah, P25 was made for commercial too, but DMR is just, I have a DMR radio, and I'll probably get another one, but I just don't like the programming on them. It's way too hard. P25 is a lot easier to program. You do need it depends on a radio. You need a programming software. I actually like the audio quality. I know this. I have my flame suit on, by the way, because I'm sure we can get some flamethrowers here. But I know people talk about the quality of DMR, but DMR I find audio all over the spectrum, the level. P25 so far has really sounded incredibly great. So I like the audio quality better. Anyway, flame suit still on. Fire away. N6H WB5EKU.
K6KB.
I'm adding KG5TNK and K6KD to the list. Well, Don, listen, there you go. See, programming. I mean, I can buy into that. Anything that's easy to program. Of course, I think D-Star is easy to program, but compared to DMR, which is a nightmare and can be expensive, and seemingly there doesn't, every manufacturer has a different CPS and different features, and there isn't any consistency between manufacturers of DMR as far as the features and programming. Of course, there is a wide variety of radios and features, and I guess the CPSs go along with them. But I got it. It's simple to program. In addition to causing more damage when you throw it, they're all pluses. I appreciate the help. W6KD, go ahead.
Yeah, I kind of look at it a little different way. We've got D-Star and then Fusion also, although I think it's sort of something of a step down. It was a latecomer, and it was I think Yaesu's attempt to do digital, but they didn't want to, they wanted to do it differently. They didn't, for whatever reason, diversity, I guess, would be a word you could use in modes, is driven by I think it's just pure jealous, proprietary ambition on the part of the different manufacturers. Because D-Star was already pretty well established when Fusion came along, and frankly, I don't see Fusion adding really anything to the mix. It just does things differently. But in any event, those are both ham radio. They're designed by ham radio. They use ham radio call signs, and they're built to operate specifically in the ham bands. They're made for us. The DMR radios it's a bastardization of a commercial radio system, and we've kind of made it work. But the one single attraction above all for DMR is the fact that you can go buy one of the radios for $89. If it weren't for that, DMR wouldn't have so much luster, I don't think. Back in the days when it was DMR Mark and they were using, all Motorola repeaters and there were no hotspots and everybody was using, high-end Motorola or maybe Hytera radios, in the $800 to $1,000+ range, not nearly as attractive as today with a, literally $100 NB380 out there available to use. So that's the big attraction for DMR. Let me change hands. Anyway, P25 and NXDN don't have that advantage. Those radios are far, far more expensive. They're at least as expensive as the D-Star and Fusion fare, and in many cases much more expensive. The NXDN stuff that I looked at, I believe it was Kenwood radios, were very expensive. And and with P25, you almost got two different kinds of. Well, you do have two different kinds of P25 because P25 Phase 1 is an FDMA signal, and Phase 2 is TDMA like DMR is. Time division multiple access with multiple time slots. And anyway, the majority of the differences relate more to setting up repeater systems, and in particular repeater systems for public safety organizations, fire departments and police departments and Joe's Plumbing or whatever. But the differences are kind of lost on us, particularly those of us that are using the type of use we use in ham radio, whether it be a repeater or a hotspot, is quite the subset of that. We don't use all of those features that are built into those systems that facilitate better ways of being able to, for example, in a fire department, they can issue sort of a cell call system where they can hit a button in the station and alert and then key up radios in 3 or 4 different fire stations at once automatically. That kind of feature is something that again we don't really use in ham radio. But the big thing is that the equipment is really expensive. So, I don't see the attraction there. Now, it could be that as P25 Phase 2 continues to expand, there might be a glut of used Phase 1 radios, which are essentially C4 FM. The technology is very similar to what Yaesu uses. It's a C4 FM radio that uses AMB Plus 2 vocoder, the same as DMR and C4 and Fusion and NXDN for that matter. So, if a wave of cheap radios shows up, that might be an incentive to play around with it. But in any event, I don't see people putting repeaters up because of the sheer cost. And the fact that it's just, how many different directions are we going to go? It's bad enough with the 3 modes we have now. Let me reset one more time. So anyway, ideally, if P25 and NXDN come into the mix, hopefully it will be designed in so that it becomes part of this, what I call the Great Convergence, so that maybe MMDVM includes P25 and it includes NXDN, so that you can use one of those, deadly weapon radios or whatever. If you like the radio, you come across a P25 or an NXDN radio, or for whatever reason you just got to go buy one. You can use it, but you don't have to have an entirely different set of infrastructure to ride on to make it work. Because since it is using the same vocoder, it is at least at first blush, feasible to maybe transfer that back and forth format-wise to DMR and ride the rails that way. Take it at the gateway level, convert it to a DMR stream, and then send it downstream, via the backbone as a DMR stream, or something like that. But adding P25 repeaters, and NXDN repeaters to the mix. We're going to have 5 different kinds of radios now that we got to get to talk to each other. It gets crazy after a while. It starts becoming like the Yaesu Fusion Wires X model, where you got 5,000 rooms, each with one guy in them that don't talk to each other. It's not a particularly savory model from my perspective. So, as far as the technology, the DMR radios are just as robust as the P25 in terms of audio and stuff. I think that's just a pure function of the more robust radio build that goes into a public service radio. Radio that a cop or a fireman's going to carry with him is going to be built a lot more sturdy than the Yaesu FT2D. That's just the reality. And so it's got a better audio section and a better speaker. And that's been my observation of DMR radios in general, is that their audio is better because they're more robust. It's not because the signal, it's not because the DMR vocoder is so much better. It's virtually the same bit rate. 50 bits per second is the only difference. And it's really the radios that make the difference, and I doubt that we're gonna find that P25 is somehow superior to the DMR radios, for example. I think they're going to find them very similar. They use a different technology, but anyway. So yeah, hopefully that if we see a surge in those kind of types of radios being used, it'll be built-in reset. Okay, that's it. Anyway, built in to the Great Convergence, so that when you show up with a P25 radio, you get funneled into a place that already exists, whether that be Brandmeister or one of our XLX reflectors with a transcoder on it or something like that. What we don't want to see is a whole nother community spring up with a whole different type of technology, and then another one still in an XDN. It just fragments the small body of operators we have already. So that's it. Back to the net. W6K.
The Great Convergence. Indeed. Next up, N1DOT. Go ahead.
Yeah, I will agree with what the other gentleman said. The P25 radios, they're much more rugged. But on a side note, Mike, a lot of what's been done with system fusion particularly on the voice wide, is modeled after the P25. You're going to find that voice wide is not even an AMBI protocol. The P25 is not even an AMBI protocol. It's improved multiband excitation, or IMBE. Okay, that's one thing. The other thing is the bit rate on P25 is much higher. It's based on a 9600 watt bit rate, not 4800 bit rate that uses a base for DMR. Okay, so that's what makes the audio sound better on Fusion. On P25. They got the higher bit rate, and plus they're using the full bandwidth for that entire bit rate for that vocoder. So I've actually used all four modes, and my preference is the P25 audio. It sounds much more natural, even though it's an older vocoder that does not have that still has issues with background noise running in the background, just like D-Star does, because it's an older vocoder. N1DOT.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I appreciate that. So, Ken, what do you use P25 with? What do you talk to with that radio? Go ahead.
I use it with the DV4 Mini, number one. There's guys using it on the DV. I'm using it with an MMDBM. It can be used with a Zumspot. There's quite a bit of activity. On the Pacific reflector, there's quite a bit of Australian activity. On the North American reflector, there's also quite a bit of activity. Right now, there's only four major reflectors, and they tried to limit it because they didn't want the scenario happening with D-Star and Fusion, where you have 500 places to go and nobody there. So they've restricted the reflector code as far as MMDBM is concerned, and they kind of grouped the activity so you can find pockets of activity without having to hunt all over the place. I mean, I can go to all four reflectors, and it only takes like 6 channels in my radio on one particular zone. And Motorola radios are difficult to program because you got to create a separate personality for each channel, and channels to the zone, and then you got to associate the personality. Personality is basically a whole bunch of group of features that are associated with channel, and there's so many features on a Motorola P25 radio that amateurs never use. But that's what makes them difficult to program, because they're set up for a commercial market, because Phase 1 radios are trunky. Phase 1 radios are C4FM FDMA, and P25 Phase 2 radios are TDMA trunky. That's the difference between Phase 1 and Phase 2 primarily. And Phase 2 also uses the AMBE vocoder with the advanced noise cancellation.
Got it. Thank you. KA5TNK, welcome. Go ahead.
Good evening. Hello, everybody on that. Been very interesting listening this evening, as usual. We've heard so much about P25 now, going back to the open spot thing. I don't know. The open spot, I currently use it with that DP link, and we're talking about how do you eliminate that. I've recently come across the BlueStack Micro Plus board. You can take your DV Mega off of your Raspberry Pi, put it on this board, and you can Bluetooth it directly to your cell phone, whether it be Android or Apple, and eliminating the other device altogether. And using Bluetooth consumes less power from your phone than using the Wi-Fi hotspot. So there's that BlueStack Micro Plus you can put your DV Mega board onto and directly connect it via Bluetooth to your cell phone, Android, or Apple. I haven't gotten it yet. I'm looking at getting it, and then maybe be able to report back on it.
Well, I hope you do, because the BlueStack Micro Plus board, I've heard that whispered one at a time. I think it's pretty new, but you would be the first station to key up and admit that you have one, and we sure would like to hear how it went, how it works, and how it sounds. Of course, it should sound fine, but yeah, listen, if you're getting sick of P25, I understand. Sometimes, I get that way. But, it's a fun thing to talk about because it's part of MMDVM. G4KLX is written code for it, and it's out there. It seems to be an open source digital voice mode, and look, we just can't, kick it to the side. Well, I guess we could, but believe me, we're not going to open up any one of these roundtables talking about P25. But we appreciate you being with us, Brian. Thanks for that update, and look forward to the report. K6KD, thanks for waiting. Go ahead.
Okay, well, I think, good evening again, Mike. I think if we're going to include P25, it's only fair that we include NXDN also, and really make we should look in. I'm not too familiar with it, but we should really make a strong case for that too, because why not use everything? Well, actually, my real attitude is, as far as the point about commercial grade, as an incentive for P25, I suggest you consider the Motorola XPR 7550E as as a good solid radio with good quality. And there are cheaper ones and lighter ones too. Within the Motorola line, as well as the Hytera makes some. I think it's fine for anybody that if you want to go out and buy a P25 radio, I think it's great. The thing I've noticed is, and just responding to Ken, Ken says they are limiting the reflectors to several, so there isn't a confusion of many reflectors. And I realize that with a lot of reflectors, there's a lot of confusion, but I don't, if it's open source, I guess there's some sort of control being exerted, and it just kind of rubs me the wrong way to have a system where you can't set up your own infrastructure. Maybe you can, and I'm just not familiar with it. But the way I look at it is there's a real role for DMR because of the cost of the radios and because of the transcoding. And, I say for anybody that wants to buy the others, go ahead, knock yourself out. But as far as I'm concerned, it's kind of a diversion. We're spending a lot of effort to integrate DMR, low cost, high quality radios, all the way up to the Motorola's if you want to spend the money and have a real big heavy radio. And we're integrating that with D-Star. And I think, from my perspective, everything else is a diversion. Not that anything wrong with it, but I think if you're gonna put P25 in there, let's go for NXDN as well. And maybe we can come up with some other modes too. Back to net in K6KD.
Well, I think the phrase "the more modes the merrier" has long since come and gone, and we found the difficulty, as you've described, somewhat tongue-in-cheek, of having way too many modes, and W6KD made quite a case for that. There is a big difference, John. I got to tell you, I'd much rather drop a $125 P25 radio than a $750 Motorola 7550 DMR radio. One would make me cry. The other one, I would just look at in, semi-interest, shrug my shoulders, and hope that when I picked it up, it still worked. When you drop a, $750, $800 radio, you start crying before you even, you're in a panic before you even get down the ladder to retrieve it. But we understand your position. And we are not going to discuss NXDN, at least not tonight. All right, anything further? I think I'm out of stations. Now, look, if you keyed up and I didn't recognize you, which was not done intentionally, but sometimes when we get a lot of stations keying up, doubles occur, and I don't always, even though I get them displayed, I may not catch every call. So if you keyed up and I didn't recognize you, please key up again. But also, anyone else with anything else to add to this edition of the Thursday Night D-Star Roundtable, this would be a great time to key up as well. Stations, please key up now.
N1D.
N1DOT, go ahead.
Depending on the quality, Mike, P25 radios can be had for a little over $100. It all depends if you want a 48 channel one without a display and without a keypad. But because you don't have to program more than 7 or 8 channels to use it with your favorite MMDVM or your favorite thumb spot, you can get a commercial grade Motorola that has 48 channel capability. And it's called an XTS 5000 or a 2500 Model 1 series that don't have a display and a keyboard. They're fairly low cost. And it's when you start getting into the full keypad radios that the cost increases significantly. That's where a lot of people, when they start getting into the displays and the full keypads, that increases the cost by a couple $100. In some cases more. But basic P25 radios, as long as you can get the programming software, and the programming software can be had off eBay, just along with programming cables. All that stuff can be gotten off eBay. But P25 Model 1 radios without displays and the 48 channel 4-zone capability are very inexpensive. And when DOT.
Yeah, so it seems. KC8YQL sent me an eBay link of some closing sales of the 400 to 470 P25 radios, and they're, I didn't take a look at each and every one, but they were an average of about, this one particular sale or auction was for exactly 125, but in looking at the other listings, they're about the same. And of course, John was, I think he mentioned the 7550 because it's the brick of the late model DMR radios from Motorola. And I don't think he's suggesting anybody lay out that kind of money for that radio, given the current state of the market, unless you just, have to have that particular radio. It is the top of the line, for heaven's sake. But we would appreciate your help in understanding the model comparison and price. So, since I'm not going to buy a P25, it can be $5. Well, not $5 I might buy it, but anyway. All right, anything further for tonight's roundtable? I think it's close to being closed. We've just about beat up P25 to death, and that's fine. We haven't talked about that much, and it is a fun topic, and there is a point to discussing other modes, as you guys have heard from various stations, modes that, are fairly recent in the amateur community, and those of interest are pushing it around, and others have no interest in it, and that's what makes it interesting. But everybody has an opinion, and it's a great thing. So anything further for the roundtable tonight, we'll take you now. Otherwise, hold your peace until, next Thursday night, or at your convenience on the constellation of X reflectors during non-net hour stations. Please keep. Alrighty. So, and before we end the roundtable, I appreciate the posts in the shout box, and some stations that have been listening in have added to it, and some thoughts have been placed in it. We will move the shout box to the shout box history within usually a few moments of the roundtable being closed, and you can find it there in the shout box history, and it will give it a clean slate so that we can build up comments and observations and topics and all kinds of cool things for next Thursday's roundtable. I want to thank all of the stations that participated in tonight's net, because without your participation, there would be no roundtable and no fun on this net at all. Be sure to visit the constellation of X reflectors as you have time. I'm going to skip the usual stuff that I go through because most of it's already been covered, and I have so enjoyed this net tonight. I hope you guys have as well, and we look forward to talking to you on any of the reflectors in our constellation that's part of the Kings of Digital system during the week. Don't be shy, come on by, especially if nothing's happening on your other favorite reflector. And usually here after the net, there are a few stations that hang around to chew the fat on whatever subject may come up. Usually it's subjects that don't come up during the roundtable forum for one reason or another. And so we'll look forward to talking to you here. And I appreciate the time that you spent with us. And hopefully we'll be able to carry on. Well, hopefully we will. So I'm going to head down the hall. I got to take a break. I got to take it now. I'll be back on the air a little bit later. And everyone have a great weekend. And we'll talk to you on digital. N6HKH. Good night.
Yeah, N1DOT on linking.
N1.
Well, long net, good net tonight, Mike. VE7LEE in Vancouver on linking.
Thanks, Ted. Hi, Ted. Bye, Ted.
Hold on, Teddy Lee. You know the routine. Are you or are you not? KC8YQL.
I'm on the dock tonight there, Bill. I'm not on the ship, on the dock.
Okay. That's all I wanted to know. Didn't know if I was able to throw you a lifesaver tonight. It sounds like you got one eye open, one eye shut, like I do. I don't think I could throw you a lifesaver tonight. Good thing you're on dry dock.
Yeah. Still converting from European time to Pacific Daylight Time. And that I guess I get to go to bed around 1 a.m. in the morning. 73 is everybody. VE7LEE is QSY to Reflector 1 Charlie.
Yes, sir. I think I'm going to run down the hallway with Mike, but I'm not going to come back. I'm going to stay down at the hallway. And if you run into my pal up north of the border again, time to get a D-Star radio. You have to get a D-Star radio. He would have really enjoyed hearing EI's memorial net that VE3AJB put on for Eric. So, you know, that would have been a really good net that Andre could have listened to. I think I got his name right, Andre. Anyway, good night, Ted. Last time I'm on a Kia hitting a snoozy doozy. And I'm listening to Heather Wade in the background. She's got some goofy guy on there talking about YouTube videos. Have a good night. Everybody else have a good night, too. From Northwestern Ohio. KC8YQL.
Yeah, good night, Bill. N1DOT.
Hey, Ken. Check your email out. Holler back at me and tell me what you think. Was that 3000 been okay? Sure is an ugly color. Check your email. Talk to you later, Ken. 73. KC8YQL.